order the special town council meeting.
Recording in
It's,
progress.
Thank you. Wednesday, December 18th, and we are at the Fairfax Women's Club, 46 Park Road. It is a special town council meeting, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things. There is no open time for public expression, although there is public comment on agendized items only. Only 24 hours notice is required for special meetings, so in case you're wondering, it's a little different than regular meetings. And finally, we are carrying over 2 items and the consent calendar from the meeting that was held on December 4th, which had a really packed agenda. Hi, excuse me. Hi, thank you. Can you sit down and you can talk in a little bit, okay? Yeah, just a sec. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Bye, take care. Okay, so, people will have a chance to talk when we get to public comment period. So we're going to start out by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join us, please do so. Okay. So now I think we do a roll call vote of everyone who's present. Is that right?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Ager. Councilmember Ager.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Garanghelli. Here. One more time with the microphone on, please.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Kohler.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
Here.
Mayor Blash.
Here. Excuse me. And then I think we need to move the agenda, or approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Councilmember Ager. Microphone.
Aye.
Councilmember Garanghelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
Yes.
Mayor Blash.
Yes. I'd like to read the land acknowledgement and the meeting protocol. So the Fairfax Town Council acknowledges that we are located on the unceded ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok people of present-day Marin County. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors past, present, and emerging. Now, the meeting protocol, the mayor shall maintain order at the meeting. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and/or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. Please turn off all cellular phones or place them on silent mode. I did want to mention that we'd like to avoid clapping, booing, hissing, or foot stomping during public comment or deliberations, because we want to make a safe space for everyone to speak, and we hope that people can disagree without being disagreeable. So thank you. The town council will review the agenda at 10 p.m. to ascertain which items, if any, will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started by 11:30 p.m. will be continued to an adjourned or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend this rule. So I think we are going to move on to the regular agenda. And I did want to note that I did get a request to move the dispensary issue to the front of the meeting. But since we did that last time, I think out of respect to the folks who wanted to discuss the homeless issue, we're going to keep that at the front of the agenda. So apologies to the folks from MAM, but we're going to have to do it this way this time. So we are going to start the regular agenda, and that is introduction of an ordinance repealing Town Code Section 12.36.020, nighttime use, permission of town clerk or designee required, and Section 12.36.030, nighttime use, grant of permission, conditions, construction, and adding Chapter 9.30, camping on public property, to Title 9, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare of the Town Code. And so I'll hand this over to Town Attorney Janet Colson.
So this evening, the town manager is unable to be with us. She had a family emergency, and so I'm going to go through the PowerPoint that she prepared for this item.
And can I take just a second, because we have some new people in the audience. So the way this is going to go is there'll be a presentation by the town attorney, and then the council will ask any questions they need to ask, and then we will open it up to public comment on this item. And I just wanted to do that up front because I know there's some people in the audience who might not have been in a town council meeting before. So thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, as I said, this is a presentation that the town manager has prepared. So I'm going to go through it, and I was given direction at one of the last council meetings, not the last council meeting, but one of them, to come back with a draft of an up-to-date, what's called an anti-camping ordinance. And that is to amend the code sections that are outdated and adopt very specific anti-camping language in conformance with recent case law. Next slide, please. So that is what you have before you tonight. It's on for introduction, which is first reading, which can happen at a special meeting. The second reading, or the adoption, can only happen at a regular meeting, and that is January 9th, 2025, if it's adopted tonight. The town will continue to work with the county, to facilitate shelter housing for unhoused Fairfax residents, continue to work with the MCCMC committee. That's the Marin County
It's Marin County
Council.
Council of Council Members and Mayors.
Mayors, yes, Committee on Homelessness, and then to implement the ordinance. There are signs and notices that have to be put up first pursuant to the ordinance in places where camping is not allowed. And sufficient notice must be given before an encampment can be cleared out or people can be told they have to leave. And we will have to hire a contractor to perform the safe and orderly removal of personal property at the encampment. And that will all be bagged up, tagged, and pictures will be taken. All sorts of documentation will be created about where it was found, who it might belong to. It will be stored in a safe place. And the people who are camping there will be told how they can retrieve their private property, their personal property. That is a requirement of the courts. And then we will continue to repeat camp cleanups as needed or as necessary if additional camping happens pursuant to the ordinance. Can I have the next slide? So the manager anticipates additional expenses here, additional time spent from the police department and Department of Public Works as far as labor is concerned. We do have to get a contractor who can safely collect and store materials, who's familiar with handling of these materials and understands how to do that in a safe manner. And also what is necessary to be kept and what is not needed to be kept. Anything that is soiled or is a hazard, a biohazard, those sorts of things do not have to be kept. We will have to put up signage initially before any cleanup. We will have to put up additional signage that indicates the date when the contractors will arrive to remove the belongings. And we don't know how many times we'll have to do this, cleaning up of an encampment, but it is anticipated we may have to do it at least one more time. So next slide, please. And that I can try to answer any questions.
Councilmember Kohler?
Yeah, just a question on the ordinance itself on page 4 and 5.
Yes.
The section that's 9.30.050, which is titled Unauthorized Encampments or Sleeping on Public Property. And on C and D, it talks about being unlawful to sleep. And I understand the intent of this ordinance is no camping, but I think, for example, somebody could be sitting on a park bench and taking a nap for a half hour or in a picnic. And I don't think our intent, and perhaps I'm wrong, would be to prohibit people from sleeping. So I would just ask, is there something about the intent that I'm missing?
No, I think if you look at it, it's pretty specific as to as where sleeping is not permitted. And I know that you and I had a discussion about, having a picnic in the park, putting a blanket down, falling asleep after having food. That's not really what's anticipated here. If you look at B, no person may sleep on any public sidewalk, bus shelter, street, alleyway, median, parkway, or right-of-way, or in any pedestrian or vehicular entrance to public or private property abutting a public sidewalk at any time as to do so compromises individual and public safety. So I don't anticipate that that one causes too much of a problem, because if you're picnicking in the park and you fall asleep, or if you fall asleep on a park bench or something, that is not what's talked about in B. And then C, at all times, it's unlawful for any person to camp and maintain an encampment or sleep where such activity poses an immediate threat or an unreasonable risk of harm to any person. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. An immediate threat or an unreasonable risk of harm to public health, safety, or welfare. Again, not falling asleep after a picnic. Or disruption to any business, store, religious institution, educational facility, or government services. And I just don't see those as being the situation where you sit down and you happen to fall asleep on a park bench. D, at all times, it's unlawful for any person to camp, maintain an encampment, or sleep in the following locations. And then it talks about within 2 blocks of a school, and you've got signs up, in any open space, waterway, or banks of a waterway. I don't really expect that you would fall asleep on, you would fall asleep maybe in a park area, but in any open space, waterway, or banks of a waterway, I'm not sure that would happen. Within any transit hub or bus shelter, or along any rail tracks. And it says, in a park where it is determined there is a substantial public health, safety, and welfare risk, and provided that signs are posted prohibiting camping that are clearly visible to pedestrians. So take the situation we were talking about. Say you have signs posted prohibiting camping. If the police department determined there's a substantial public health, safety, and welfare risk of somebody falling asleep on a park bench, then that would apply. But if not, I don't really think that's going to address the situation we were talking about. I don't think that particular situation is really covered here. Is there some other place in the ordinance where you?
No, those are the places, I
Okay.
guess. It still concerns me, and I think, I'm not going to belabor this, but D1 is basically within 2 blocks of a school.
Yeah.
And I live near White Hill School, and I see those parents waiting for their kids falling asleep. So there is that, and there's nothing about a public health risk. But I realize you guys want to talk, but you will have time. So I understand where you're coming from. Thank you for the explanation.
Well, and on D, if you would like to, you could take out or sleep. So leaving in, at all times, it's unlawful for any person to camp, maintain an encampment in the following locations. And then you list the 4 locations. So on that one, I don't think sleep is absolutely necessary there. But I do think it's really important to have it in B and C. I don't think it's in A.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
That would be the
Council.
mayor that calls on us.
Okay, so Councilmember Hellman and then Councilmember Garangelli.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
sorry.
I didn't know there was.
It's kind of hard to keep track.
I know that you didn't write the staff report, so, but I'm going to ask you questions and maybe the chief can help out too. So I have questions about how many people are there at this point in time? How many campers are at the site above Perry Park currently? Sleeping,
I do
sleeping
not-
overnight?
I do not know the answer to that. Perhaps the
Chief, do
police
you know?
Yes.
We're averaging about 5 to 7 persons sleeping there overnight.
Okay, thank you. And then what I would really appreciate is a timeline because it's really hard to understand. So starting with, should this ordinance pass this evening? When does it become effective? When does the 72-hour notice, when is that delivered? Right? And then I think I understand the 30 days after that. And, on an exception basis, there can be an extension, but I just would appreciate a timeline.
Well, as far as the ordinance is concerned, if it is adopted, if it is introduced tonight, if it is voted and passed tonight,
Yeah.
that's the introduction, it's the first reading. The second reading having to happen at a regular meeting would happen in January, on January 9th. 30 days after that, the ordinance would be effective. And we
30
could,
days post January.
January 9th.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And then there needs to be posting of signage in the park, no camping, no encampments, that sort of thing. So after second reading, after adoption,
Sorry, the signage happens after the 9th of February or whatever the 30 days is after.
I would say it should wait till after the 30 days past January
Okay.
9th. So
Okay.
let's say, second week of February. But you can go ahead and have those signs made up after January 9th. I would think that would be safe to go ahead and have those signs made up and then put them up when the ordinance is effective. And then if there is a particular encampment that you need to notice, the 72-hour notice would go for that encampment and the people there would be noticed. There would be signage put up. I have seen signs placed on tents, handed to people, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And say, do you understand 72 hours is 3 days? That means, Friday, we're going to come and take all of this. If there's anything here that you do not want to be taken and put in storage, you need to take it with you and you need to leave
Okay.
by Friday at whatever time. And so that's how that would work.
Okay. And my understanding, again, maybe Chief can chime in, is that all the members of the encampment, and I believe there might be one or two of them here with us this evening, have been informed of this public process, which is moving in this direction. And so it should not catch anybody by surprise who is living at the encampment above Perry Park. Everyone has been informed that an anti-camping ordinance is likely on the horizon. Is that accurate?
I understand that is accurate. I think the manager has more information about that, but I don't know if the police chief does or not.
We engage in those conversations, but as far as our noticing to those who are unhoused, we don't do that as part of it, as part of our conversations though. From my understanding though, the homeless subcommittee that was formed prior to the new council being installed was in communication with them about this upcoming.
Yeah,
ordinance.
I know you don't notice, but you did include that in your conversations.
It's always,
Okay.
it's a standard conversation they have with them that this is in the works. It's probably coming soon. And it's probably why there's those people in the homeless encampment that are here tonight. Because
Right.
they know about it.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Janet.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councilmember Garanghelli, but just say quickly that I have been up there several times and informed people when we were about to have a meeting. And so I think, some people know that it's likely to happen.
On the section 9.30020, the town manager means the town manager of the Fairfax Town of California or designee. We've discussed this before. It's still, I think, a concern that it would be, I think, an easy potential fix to put the order of the chain of command, town manager, chief of police, the sergeant or officer in charge when the chief's not here. My concern and other people's concerns is that we want to make sure the chain of command works 24/7.
Right. And I have spoken with the manager about your concerns about that. And she says there's no concern. You don't have to plan on calling her at midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever, that there is always somebody here, the police department, who can notify people if there is a new encampment being set up. But the point of the ordinance is that you give notice to the people, and so that you actually go out with written notice during daylight hours, not in the middle of the night, but during daylight hours, and notice them that, okay, you can't do this here. You see the sign that says you can't camp here. Here's your notice 3 days from now, 2 days from now, or however long that the council wants to make it. We are going to have contractors come in and remove all belongings, tents, sleeping bags, camping paraphernalia, et cetera. So for action in the middle of the night type of thing, it would just be the regular police department telling people, see that sign over there? It says you can't camp. You can't do that here.
At nighttime.
Yeah. If it happens at
Between
nighttime.
sunset and sunrise, if people go into the park,
No, they wouldn't be using that particular provision. They'd be using this provision. And this provision requires that signage, permanent signage be put up that says no camping in this park, no camping in this area. And so we will be doing that should this ordinance pass.
I'm talking about when you tell people that they can't do it. You're just going to do that in the daytime? We're going to do it if, let's say, they moved in there at 9 o'clock at night or midnight.
I think Chief would take that.
Yes, I can answer that. So in the event that we get a call or we observe that there's a new encampment being formed after hours, then that incident would be logged and we would refer to this ordinance here to issue that notice as if it were daytime, and it would be logged in our incident with a timestamp. So that time frame would start with that interaction.
Okay, Councilmember Egger.
Mayor, please, thank you. On that section 9.30050 that we've been talking about, on D, number 3, just a little cleanup. We haven't had any railroad tracks in Fairfax since the 1950s, so maybe we could drop that little section. I mean, it's probably taken from another ordinance, but talks about transit hub, bus shelter, or along any rail tracks.
Right.
And they've been going for a long time.
Well, they have, but we can take it out or we can leave it in case we have any rail lines that might come back in. I mean, it's designed to be all encompassing.
Okay. And so then another question I have, the current ordinance had nothing to do with camping. It was adopted by the town council in 2009. And I went through the minutes from 2009, both the introduction and the adoption. And the introduction, the police chief at the time, I guess that was Ken Hughes, gave a report. And the minutes really don't tell you a lot about what was going on, what the reasoning was. And then on the adoption, which took place a month later, the town manager, Michael Rock, was presented the staff report. There's no reference to the word camp or camping in those minutes. So it's clear to me that the purpose and intent was not to regulate camping in any of our parks. So my question is, if in fact we took out section 2 altogether and section 3 of the ordinance, and it left the existing code in effect and just adopted this new code as in effect, an adjoining code or overlay, however you want to call it. It seems to me that would be okay. It would work. I don't see a conflict between the two.
So the reason I initially had those sections completely taken out. The first part of it says can't be in the park after dark unless you're a uniformed town employee on duty, et cetera. The second section sets up this very odd situation where the clerk can actually grant permission for groups of people or people to be in the park after dark. And I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning for that is, but I didn't want to create any potential conflict between the procedure outlined here and the procedure outlined there in section 12020. It talks about the clerk being allowed to grant permission to groups of people to be in the park after dark, provided the clerk determines that adequate police protection is available. And that's in 030, the same type of thing of that permission. And so I didn't want anybody, coming in and filing some sort of a request with the clerk to have an encampment or to be in the park after dark. I just did not want the possibility of having a separate procedure that's sort of antiquated and not really applicable to what we're talking about, potentially conflicting with conflicting provisions about procedure. And so, and I think it's odd, frankly, to have the clerk granting permission. The other thing that's really unfortunate about that section is whenever the council grants authority to subordinates to do something, it can't be a discretionary act. It needs to be ministerial. And if there is any form of discretion employed, there need to be standards such that people can, the clerk or whomever can apply those standards and know without exercising his or her discretion that the person either gets the permission or doesn't get the permission. And that is not really the way that's written right now. So I would have difficulty saying we could enforce those sections as they're written right now because of that.
So we do have sanctioned events at nighttime in the parks. During the festival, there's the movie night. During Halloween, there's for the children in the park after dark. We've had candlelight memorial services at night. So
Menorah lighting.
Those things happen and occur, and that's why I think the present ordinance allowed the town clerk to be able to sanction some of these public events that happen. So what's going to happen? How will the festival do a movie night if this ordinance is in effect?
This ordinance will not conflict with that because this ordinance prohibit camping or camp defined to pitch, erect, or occupy an encampment or to use camp paraphernalia or both for the purpose of or in a way that facilitates outdoor sheltering for living accommodation purposes or for remaining outdoors overnight. And then it defines camp paraphernalia, and it defines encampment, means one or more temporary makeshift or hand-built structures not intended for long-term continuous occupancy, including tents, that are used to shelter one or more persons or their belongings and that are not authorized by the property owner. Encampment includes any camp paraphernalia and personal property associated with or located in or around structures or tents. So it has a very defined meaning for encampment, camp, camping, camp paraphernalia, those sorts of things. So those would not be covered by this ordinance. A menorah lighting, a movie night, that sort of walking your dog in the park after dark. Yes.
So section 12.36.020, nighttime use prohibited. And it spells out, you can't be in these locations between sunset and sunrise. And it says, nighttime use granted permission, conditions, construction, etc., is hereby amended to read, only the tennis courts can be used at nighttime. So I
left those in. I left all that in because people, the last time we had this on the agenda, were concerned about that, about not having some means of saying, hey, you can't be in the park after dark just for,
Well, the only exception, though, is tennis courts.
That's part of our existing.
There's no exception for a movie night or the Halloween event.
No, but that is part of the existing code, and I just left that in. I did not try to take that out because that does happen. People check out keys for the tennis courts, apparently, according to the police department.
Thank you.
And what I would like to do eventually, and sooner rather than later, actually, is take all of the park rules that are scattered throughout in the code in different places and pull them all together in a resolution, updating them, adding things like smoking and vaping and that sort of thing. But that's not this.
Are there any other questions? From the council members, I mean. Okay. So I would like to open this up for public comment. And for people who haven't been here before, you line up in the order that you would like to speak. And then when you're called on, you get 2 minutes to speak. And so let people kind of get ready to go. And we're going to start out with Mr. McIntosh. And are we ready for public comment?
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Dear Liesel, I'll begin with an apology for not reviewing your proposed ordinance prior to this evening. I had poorly assumed with so much input as well as our personal correspondence of matrices of proportionality that the ordinance now presented in the agenda packet would represent something workable and something that would protect all citizens, housed and unhoused, and the town. I feel the language as presented does neither. Not as an antagonistic jab, but the language of this ordinance looks like something poorly crafted by an attorney or other party hoping that it will garner gainful future employment from its open definitions and subjective enforcements. If something is currently drafted, we can avoid litigation and hopefully move on to other issues. Please give me 3 weeks and I'll tighten this up and offer it for your review to implement or not. I will not charge you. We can all see that the homeless issue is not subsiding, but actually growing with current attempts to solve the problems. Why? Because the homeless industry is big business and big government. Our own Governor Newsom cannot or will not explain where or how he spent $24 billion on this issue. Maybe this spending actually increased this crisis. I do not want to see the town continue the same folly. In the past, Fairfax has different models of town management. Currently, we employ a town manager where the council wants to shirk or defer their elected responsibilities. In the past, we have also enjoyed a town administrator when the council was more engaged, with their citizens. Remember, both of these positions are and have been filled by out-of-town, non-Fairfax residents. Their interests are to garner as much money as they can before jumping ship to another job elsewhere. Throughout this ordinance, you only designate the town manager to direct or implement. I do not see Heather picking up garbage, so she will hire yet another contractor consultant, compounding more inefficiencies, generating more employment at a greater expense to the town. I'd
Thank you.
suggest
That's
keeping our
enough.
pre-existing park ordinance, but,
Okay,
and
can
I
you just-
apologize,
yeah,
you need to employ the language for the creeks from Flood District 9. There are no
Okay,
setback
great.
definitions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Thank you, Michael. That was well said. Valerie Hood, 79 Dominga Avenue. I live in Fairfax. My concern is that I don't hear any language about drug use. Now, we live on the creek, and we've had a lot of problems with drug use in the creek, such as people shooting up heroin. I had to call the cops over many years about this. And we found fixings down in the creek, which we had to notify the police about again, so that children who like to walk in the creek or people who like to walk their dogs don't end up getting a needle prick down there. Also, we've had people during the fair come and set up a tent in our neighbor's backyard right next to us. And when I told them it was private property, they walked up the creek and then thought I had left, came back and started setting up their tent again. So I don't hear anything about private property and what you plan on doing about that. So I'm very concerned about drug use, where people think they're hidden in the creek, because we've had a lot of that over time. And I'm really concerned about some of the kids that I see down there doing the same thing. It's not just adults. It's not just homeless people. It's all kinds of people. And I'm worried about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mark Bell, Fairfax. I believe it's 9.30.060A1. It still reads a minimum of 72 hours to remove personal property. Why does it say that? Why doesn't it say a maximum of 72 hours? Does this mean if somebody wants to move out in 60 hours, they have to wait 12 hours? I think the language needs to be reworked, especially on that part. There's nothing about no repetition, No grace period if someone tries to come back, no storage. There's nothing, doesn't seem to be anything about having a local committee to review this. And once this goes into effect, you're saying that you're not going to throw somebody out in the middle of the night. Well, then they must leave at daylight after this goes into effect. No grace period, no 72 hours. If you set up at 3 in the morning, you don't get 72 hours after the ordinance goes into effect. And why is this not banned at all schools? Why does it only say elementary schools? Why doesn't it say middle schools? Why doesn't it say high schools? I think those are points that need to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Robbie Powelson, I just want to say it's a beautiful day in Fairfax. And I want to thank the staff who have been working, doing regular cleanups at the camp. And, you know, I'm sorry to see where it's going. I'm disappointed too because I've learned about that things weren't what I thought. You know, Mr. Garangel, I was excited when I saw the cleanup. And then I found out today that talking with people who participated in that you showed up and got people excited about the community cleaning up. And you got a bunch of people living in the camp to participate, right? Reasonable people working with you. And yet, when the photo op came, you pull out your election signs. When I am outside and I see Frank Egger and I introduce him to a person who's living in the camp to talk, don't acknowledge it. This ordinance is not going to solve any solutions. You guys came to make solutions. You should find a way to get people into housing. People have been getting housed. There has been successful stories coming out of that camp. And right now, it's freezing cold outside. However, if you're going to make it a misdemeanor to have a blanket, to have a tent, how's that going to work? And I think you think about the city of San Rafael lawsuit. That's the basis of the restraining order was not the 8th Amendment. It was the 14th Amendment because the ordinance put people in danger. So this is going to put people's lives in danger. It's not going to solve the solutions. There's going to be a lot of disappointed people who think that criminalized homelessness is a solution, but it is not.
Thank you. Next.
I got a question. So what happens?
Can you pull the microphone a little towards you so you can hear you because we want to be able to hear you. Just pull that red thing down. Yeah, right. They're good. Thank you.
So what happens when a person of your family members that are distraught and messed up and does not want or cannot go back to their house and they are put out? What do they do? Because there's not very many places. Oh, by the way, people of Fairfax, you do have a beautiful town here. I love it, and it's part of my home. And, but this is a Miwok ceremonial ground where it was. Those people didn't have sorry. Those people did not have houses. They lived in tents. So would you like put them in jail for stopping by? I know that there's been quite a few ladies, young ladies that have came up through distraught and found a place to kick back, a safe place. Now, the people that all stay there on more of a regular basis are geared to help that situation. But we got so many people that come in that are, as I said, distraught, messed up in the head, or have issues. And I don't know. I have not seen any intravenous drug use there. Um, and it seems like a lot of the town's arguments are from incidences that are isolated. And I don't know, but it seems like it has been against what has been tried to be provided.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And
Next, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Six. I am the vice president of the Westmoreland Little League. I volunteered there for, I think this is going on my 6th year, and my 3rd year as a member of the board. We provided you with our position in a letter on November 20th, and we're just here to reiterate that if we are in support of the ordinance, if this is the step that the town council feels that it needs to take to kind of move things forward here. You know, our position is that this is really a lot about the youth of our community. You know, we have over 100 games there every single year. We have 90 volunteers that put their time in over the course of late February to, you know, all the way through June and July and early August. And, you know, over the past year during this time, you know, as a reminder, our kids have been chased, had dogs chase them from the encampment. We've had trash thrown at the children. They've been yelled at. We've encountered, you know, needles and pipes that were clearly a result of drug use, and, you know, even witnessed a drug overdose, and, you know, and another incident involving police having to chase somebody with their guns drawn. And I think everybody readily acknowledges the challenge that these issues present. And I don't think we are insensitive to the challenges that many people face in California. Our concern is for our children and presenting them with a safe and healthy environment that we can have, you know, from spring through summer and then around the year. So thank you for your support in raising this ordinance. And again, we support any measures that you would take to make it better for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Lisa Cirabella, Fairfax homeowner. And I wanted to say that while I do agree with the ordinance and any measures you want to put in place to create a safe park for adults and for children, I'm always extremely opposed to drug use, period, of any kind. I often tell the Fairfax police officers whenever I see them that it disturbs me that there's so much drug use in Fairfax and drug sales undercover in Fairfax. It is a pet peeve of mine. I want to say that my daughter, we're an adoptive family, and my daughter's birth mother is homeless and addicted to meth. And I've been helping her for 2.5 years now. And while I'm okay with the ordinance and anything other measures you want to take to have a safe park, I want us to be mindful of what the person 2 people ago just said, that this is winter, that people need blankets and tents for shelter from the rain, from the wind. That it's our duty as fellow residents to help them. We can't depend on their families to help them. Their families are sometimes dead or non-existent. So as their fellow residents in Fairfax, it's our duty to help them. We are the government. We the people. So we need to help homeless people get treatment, find housing, you name it, the whole 9 yards. So I'm willing to pay for some of that out of my own pocket. That's how much it means to me. I don't just say, oh, I'm a taxpayer, it'll come out of my taxes. I'm willing to put in money towards those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
I'll get good at this, I hope, someday. For many years now, the town council have had an experiment of allowing unhoused people to live in the public park doing whatever they wish. Word has spread out over the years that it's nice camping next to a scenic creek, and they've made themselves an open living room decked out with stuff, hosting out of area people who, based on their rap sheets, go from place to place looking for a town that is lenient in enforcement and will leave them to their own habits like drug and alcohol abuse, untreated mental illness, and petty crime. Thanks to this experimentation, Fairfax has turned into the pit stop on the road to ruin. The drug dealers come like clockwork a few times a month. They also get weekly 5-minute well-check visits and feel-good lip service from the county and pie-in-the-sky promises of housing vouchers that will never come in time. They mentally degrade until they are literally screaming in the park or downtown or yelling at kids playing baseball. The cops are called. Nothing happens. Yesterday, 2 homeless campers were discovered squatting in an empty apartment in School Street Plaza, and one was arrested for breaking and entering and resisting arrest. She was back at camp today, screaming again at her campmates. Even if someone who was down on their luck or poor ended up homeless, they don't stick around in Camp Fairfax very long. It's just too chaotic and dangerous and a dead end. I hope tonight we will stop this experiment. Let's get some accountability and find somewhere they can go with real help and supervision and care for these people who cannot help themselves due to their condition. Let's not allow people to stay who have bad ideas on how to make a living preying on drug addicts. Let's not allow this to continue to degrade our shared park, our safety and ability to enjoy our town, and most of all, to persuade those at the encampment to accept and seek the help they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. And let's not clap too much just because we want to make sure everyone feels it's okay if they have a differing opinion. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Sean Fitzgerald, Fairfax Park. Just want to start by saying that I had made a presentation about our camping, our ordinances about a month ago in November, and I had asked that the council consider making a citizens oversight committee in the formation of this ordinance, just because there's so many smart people that are so passionate that have been involved that would have loved to have been able to sit at the table with Janet. She's obviously our town's paid attorney. She has the legal expertise, but we would have loved to have been able to sit at the table with her and hear her explain in the crafting of this ordinance where each piece was coming from, and that we could have provided our input. I think it would have made for this to be a much smoother process if we just had our voices at the table. I've retained outside legal counsel as well to review this. That counsel has also reviewed the ordinance and helped put together a few questions for this ordinance. One is the nighttime use that Frank Egger brought up. We also wonder why that needs to be combined. It doesn't seem to permit for the Fairfax Festival or other nighttime uses. It specifically calls out tennis. But if it's going to call out tennis, shouldn't it call out the Fairfax Festival and other uses there? Otherwise, I feel like that should be wholly separate. It's to prevent nighttime use for a variety of reasons. Mike Garangelli brought up the town manager role. Chief Rico did explain that he can enforce it, but it doesn't seem clear from the ordinance that the town manager, it says, or designee. So why couldn't it just say the town manager or police officer on duty? I don't understand why we couldn't just say that in the ordinance. Want to ask that under expedited abatement that we list a repeat offender allowance there, so that if someone is abated after 72 hours and they up and move to another part of town, they don't reset the clock. It'd be nice to just be able to have an updated, a faster way to ask that person to move on if they're already under storage and they were abated. Perhaps a 30-day rule. If they're found within 30 days, they have to be moved along. And the last thing is please remove the enforcement of public and harassment. There's no legal basis for that, having the public not enforce the rule.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Larry Bragman. Excuse me. You know, the homeless situation is by no means singular to Fairfax. My office is in Fairfax, in San Rafael, across from the Ritter Center, and there's a lot of camping happening in San Rafael. So you're not alone, and the problem is much bigger than Fairfax. And obviously, this ordinance is not going to solve the issue. It's a national issue. I do agree with Frank's comment about 12.03 12.36.020 being overbroad. There should be some language in there about authorized activity, permitted activity, like the film night. Festival hires private security over the weekend to walk around to protect the exhibitors. So I do think that's overbroad. You know, I think the situation, with all due respect to, you know, the individual condition of the campers in Fairfax, it's location. We need to find a better location. And I know Mayor Blash and I have both reached out to the county. It was a dead end. We need help. This is a bigger problem than this little town can solve. We need help from the county. We need some financial help to find a better and safer location for everyone. So I think we have to focus strategically on that goal because so far it's been a dead end. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, Deb London. Regarding this ordinance, I agree with things that Michael Mack said, what Valerie Hood said, what Jen said, what Sean said. It feels to me like this ordinance needs some work still. In my life and in my business, I've been out doing what I do for 45 years. And one thing I've learned is that sometimes you have to make sure that things are done right the first time. And I'm sort of a one and done person. I don't like to spin my wheels, backpedal. I think that I don't think the ordinance is quite there yet. I think it lacks teeth. I agree with Frank. I agree with Mike. I think it can't be just Heather. It needs work. And as much as all of us want to move this forward so we can start taking action, we're not there yet. So that's all I'm saying is there's so much that's been left out that we need to take a closer look. And yes, it would have been great, once again, to have a seat at the table. I have learned a little bit since last time in that, you know, the storage, all this storage language has credence, I believe. But it would help all of us a lot on this side of the table if we had more of a voice or an understanding as to where all this is coming from. I think more work on it, include all those things that Michael was talking about, that Sean's talking about. These are important things. So I highly encourage that, that more work be done on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Fairfax. Todd Greenberg, downtown Fairfax speaking. Number of items. First off, I'd like to request that everybody be given protocol directions to identify themselves that speak in front of this council, as I do every time I speak. And that priority be given to Fairfax residents, because your job is to take care of Fairfax residents, not to have an open arms policy as per prior Mayor Kohler's signing something welcoming refugees to Fairfax. This applies here. This is relevant to this topic. As I've spoken before, what your supposedly noble goals are, as prior Mayor Bragman just indicated, are completely out of scale with Fairfax's capabilities. You need to be pragmatic, and you need to take the time ASAP and solve this problem. It's been 3 years. You're endangering children. You're creating pollution. You're doing so many things that are contrary to the lip service that you've given before. I urge you tonight to require the town manager, as per municipal code, to enforce the ordinances that are in place to keep the existing no nighttime use of the park ordinance, and to do what you need to do to clear out that encampment that is endangering this town, and also to be compassionate and to provide for services for those people. Don't want anyone to have a hard time. But you need to take care of the majority of the people in this town ASAP. Otherwise, you're not doing your duty.
Great, thank you. Next.
You hear me now? Yeah, Yuri Fairfax. I just wanted to say that this thing is kind of like a snake eating its tail, because the problem is that it's kind of like the country has a problem and dumps it on the county or the state, and the state dumps it on the county, and the county dumps it on the town. And in other words, all the problems that we were facing with the large issues in the country ends up becoming our problem in the end down the line. And the thing is that we can't really fix it unless the country decides to fix the problem. And the country can't fix the problem unless the people actually change their views about the specific economics of the problem. And like, I give you one example. I lived in a city in Germany with about 350,000 people. And all my time I've been there, I never saw one tent. Nobody there. Yeah, there were some drunks and some junkies and some people at the train station and stuff in the day. They all had places to go to. They had places they lived. And that's because they had a social system and a system in place, but it's a system by the country. And the problem is we don't have this kind of system in this country. We have a country that thinks for some reason that we can be laissez-faire, that we have centi-billionaires, we have oligarchs, and nobody wants to pay taxes. And this is the problem what we're dealing with down the line in the end. And unfortunately, I hate to sound cynical about it, but we can't do anything unless the country decides to do something, and the country can't fix itself until the views of the people in the country actually change about the economics, flat out. Unless that changes, our actual views change about the situation, we're not going to deal with homelessness at all.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm Tom Boyd. It's nice to see you all again. I've been coming here for over 20 years to Fairfax, and I've seen a lot of changes in the community, and it's always been a special place to me. I sought it out, consistently as a small town in California that had a great main street and a number of funky little stores that were always very interesting, and I started working here about 8 years ago. So I've seen the area immediately around School Street and the changes that have happened over that time. As far as I understand it, in the town council, there's a process by which you guys have an ordinance, and then you have to find the budget for it, pass the ordinance, and then go and execute on it. And it's something that you can iterate on. But in terms of taking care of the community, we've heard about taking care of the children. We also need to think of the elderly. Lynette's an elderly business owner that has a store that was broken into, more than once, graffiti on the building, a degradation of the entire School Street property. The next to her building, next to her store is a museum of things that she's accumulated over a career of 25 years. It was broken into and things from that area were stolen. There's been police involvement, but it's a challenge to resolve. So if this is a step towards resolving the issue of taking care of the children, taking care of the elderly in our community, because as community members, we're responsible, whether we're here for a short time or a long time, to reflect on how what we do impacts the other people around us. I hope that you'd move forward with the ordinance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And are there people online?
There are 7 raised hands on Zoom right now. The first speaker is Court Observer, followed by Cindy. Court Observer, you are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I'm sorry, this is Ava Crisanti. And I just wanted to second what Larry Bragman said. I did want to point out that we have almost always had a housing problem in California going back to the gold rush era. And the archives are full of varying stories. But there was a time when we had a very serious crisis, and it was during the 1930s when the migrants from the Dust Bowl came. And in that case, I think it kind of reinforces what Bragman's saying, which is that this is a problem that's bigger than what a town can do. And unfortunately, one of the issues is you end up with a bunch of lawsuits, which really can cripple a town or a city, and it really is the responsibility, at least, of the county. One of the things the federal government decided to do in the 30s was to create things like Arvin, also known as Weed Patch, WPA projects that built housing right where the people needed it. And this was sometimes, not, you could say it was rudimentary, but they were better conditions than a lot of people have right now who are housed. They had laundry facilities, they had, a community center, they had a library. And this was all done, for pennies on the dollar. Rick Wartzman, who used to write for the LA Times, has a book that deals with some of this. It's called Obscene in the Extreme. And it's about the banning and burning of John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. And a big part of that book is actually how
Can
the
you wrap it
Jones
up,
family
please?
makes it to the Weed Patch camp.
Okay,
It's
you're
doable.
over time.
Thanks.
Thank you. We got to move on. Thanks so much.
The next speaker is Cindy, followed by Jason. Cindy, you are unmuted.
Hi, good evening. Cindy Ross, longtime Fairfax resident. And I want to say that I'm really concerned. Something really, really needs to be done. But I'm concerned with how much time and energy is going into kind of watering down issues and coming up with, legal language that really is not really addressing the main concerns. And as a longtime Fairfax resident and homeowner, I follow the rules to the best of my ability. And my biggest concern is that we're trying to come up with, you're talking about an anti-camping ordinance. Well, camping's a recreational activity. And when we get into issues about like sleeping, I mean, I don't have any problems with people sleeping in the park. That's not the issue. And like Councilman Egger said, I have a concern about rescinding an ordinance that talks about getting permission to do something, because I think that the biggest problem is we have people that are not asking permission and they're not following existing laws. I don't care if people want to sleep, if they have no place else to go, if they need, if they need shelter. But the whole thing is permission. So, what's wrong with asking permission to have an event in the park? I don't want to see those things rescinded. I want to look at the issue of, people that are spending time in Fairfax need to follow the rules in Fairfax, and we need to, enforce our existing ordinances, maybe strengthen them with an anti, oh, I got cut off, but anyway.
Thank you. We've got to move on to the next person.
The next speaker is Jason, followed by Emma. Jason, you are unmuted.
Jason, can you unmute yourself? Okay, maybe we need to move on and then come back to him.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, start the clock.
It started.
Okay. What the town council is saying, if they pass this anti-camping ordinance, is if you don't live in a home, you can't exist in the town of Fairfax. I'm truly appalled by the public outcry tonight for a stiffer, more restrictive ordinance. How much more restrictive can it be? You are making it a crime to even sleep in the town. You can't even have a sleeping bag for the most rudimentary protection a person can have when they live outside. You have 17 people in the town of Fairfax who are unhoused, and there's a more compassionate way to address homelessness. If you just had an area for people to sleep, to lawfully sleep, I mean, that's all. I mean, people just need to have a chance to be safe on the street. And what you're doing is you're making it a crime. This is very disturbing and alarming. And passing this ordinance will send the town down a dark path. Really, you should really think this over. I know Councilmember Kohler is what she stated last time in the meeting is she is against the criminalization of homelessness. And I really hope that she holds true to that thought and votes accordingly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next person.
The next speaker is Emma, followed by Kay. Emma, you're unmuted.
Great. Hi, everyone. This is Emma. I was the heavily pregnant woman who hung around till the middle of the night last time trying to get a chance to speak about this. So first of all, I'd really like to thank the Town Council and Janet for their work on the ordinance so far. I'm in support of the ordinance, as well as the existing ordinance that we have, and generally support any measures that the Town Council would like to put in place to help all of our safety at this point as soon as possible. Jason and others, I don't appreciate the proposal that Fairfax is not a compassionate town. That is not true. This is a very compassionate place. People are kind and they want to help. But the point we're at now, I think there is a balancing of interests that needs to happen with these issues. It is not right to allow the interests of a small majority, homeless or not, to outweigh the needs of a far larger and arguably more vulnerable group of people, our children, because this started with our kids not being able to use the ballpark and feel safe. And the Little League players have been treated in a horrific way, which no child should ever have to witness as a result of the incumbent community. That issue still exists. Next, there was an issue with our kids feeling safe using the skate park, still exists. And finally, there was an issue with our toddlers being able to safely use their play area and their toys, and that issue still exists. So this ordinance, in some shape or form, is, in my view, the only way to get rid of these issues. I think we need action. And I agree with everyone who has said the same thing during open time. In terms of specific points, just quickly, I think the key focus should be to make sure that the ordinance is enforceable and constitutional. We've all seen the Novato ordinance situation unfold recently. I would really like Janet and the town council to take note from this and learn from the issues there. I think Sean's points about vagueness, direct ability for police to enforce the ordinance makes sense. I agree that it doesn't really make sense to have a provision providing for penalties for citizen enforcers, but also unfettered civil liability. And I don't think that these issues are huge and they could be fixed within a week or so.
Thank you. Okay,
The next speaker is Kay, followed by Rick. Kay, you are unmuted.
Hi, Town Council. First of all, I want to say I really, really appreciate the tone and everyone acknowledging. I'm going to cry. God damn it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody acknowledging the crisis that we have, and that it needs attention. I'm sorry. And then what I don't see in this ordinance is addressing fires in Perry Park. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that campfires are legal because we don't have any terminology. So I would like to see that addressed. And I do think it's a good idea to have to form an oversight committee, or invite people with their resources to see what can be done and what can be provided. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Rick, followed by Jane. Rick, you are unmuted.
Good evening, Mayor. This is Rick Hamer, downtown Fairfax. My concern here is about the signage and the notices and the consequences of those who are served these notices or are affected by them. In that some people in the homeless community simply cannot process something written in English or Spanish. or may not be able to process it at the time that they're served. For example, last month I spent almost a whole month in a hospital, and I could not even understand the simplest type of requests. Well, I think writing something in what is nothing short of legalese in English and Spanish is not being comprehensive enough to make sure that someone disabled has reasonable accommodation in order to fully understand what they're up against, and that there should be some language that if a person does not understand English or Spanish, or does have a learning disability, or is illiterate, that there is some way to ensure that they feel the full weight of what they're up against, and that they can fully understand what the consequences might be. I did not see that in the ordinance, and I'd like to see it added. This is about housing and about basically losing the ability to be housed. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jane. Jane, you are unmuted.
A little trouble. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
we
hear
can.
you.
Thank you. I won't be long. I haven't heard everything that everyone said, so please excuse me if I'm repeating. I'm grateful to all of you to be addressing this problem finally. It looks like we're getting somewhere. However, I have a concern about running up another large lawyer bill. We've already, I think, spent quite a bit putting this together, and if this is going to keep going on and on with more revisions and so forth and so on, I do think you should have a citizens oversight or input committees so that maybe people could do some of this work beforehand and get it worked out, the things that really need to be in the ordinance and the things that don't need to be in the ordinance. Let us have a voice. Have there be someplace besides this where we have 2 minutes and it's not a discussion, so that we can have input, be part of it, make it go quickly. I think at the very least, the people who are living in our park should be forced to obey the rules. And there are rules out of respect. If they're going to stay here, then the rules can be no alcohol, no smoking, things like that, that impair people's judgment and could further endanger the citizens and the children and themselves, quite frankly. The whole town could go up in flames, or heaven only knows. It's not that we don't have compassion for them, but if we're going to respect them, they need to respect us. I thank you for your time.
There are
Thank
no
you.
more speakers on Zoom.
Because it was released, it said put down your hand, and I misinterpreted, and I put down my hand. I got my 2 minutes. I'm Charlotte Fuller.
I'm going to let this one last person go, but I don't want to open it up again to more people. Is that acceptable?
Oh, I thought you said you don't.
No. I'm saying you can go, but I don't want to start. Yes, I don't want to just open it up again to a whole bunch of people at this point, but I know that you rushed in, so go ahead. Yep. Come on up.
Can you give me a 1 minute more warning? Pretend I'm in
A 1 minute warning when you get to
Where
one.
is it? There it is.
Okay,
Good.
there you go.
Wow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I didn't drive down because I thought it was going to be packed. Usually I work at nights. I'm a care provider for an elderly woman who has dementia, short-term memory loss. I spent 15 years practically working in the mental health field. I worked with Marin Mental Health, whatever it was. I was at Stop By right over there where the offices are now, by the kids' park. My grandma's name is Alma Shar. I've got 3 grandkids. I want them safe. My pals over at the unhoused encampment have some funny names, nicknames. That's what we do. And I've been bringing food when I can and getting to know them. Some amazing people. We have a veteran there. He was in the airborne. services as a medic. We have another woman who is totally an artist, probably with schizoaffective disorder. We have had so many people come and go over there that even I, just checking in every couple of days, have gotten to know. 43 seconds and going. I am impressed by the intelligence in this room of our citizenry. I want to be heard. We should definitely have a round table. One person is not going to resolve this. I'm sorry. Are you the lawyer? I'm sorry. Imagine having voices in your head. That's what schizoaffective disorder is. And understanding the language without an advocate with you. It's not okay. We're not doing a good job if we don't have an advocate with them. And I'm that person, unpaid, now.
Thank
I
you.
think my time's
Great. Okay, thank you everyone for great comments, and I'm going to bring it back for deliberation. Mr. Garanghelli.
Okay. This is one of my pet projects, so to speak. Let's face it, the last 20, 30 years, the state has done a horrible job. The housing, unhoused people are greater today. But let me give you some numbers as I understand them. 0.004% of our state, and the same as the county, is unhoused. That means that 99.996% of everyone else is in a house. So how in the heck can it take so long to figure this out? 70% of the unhoused are mentally ill. People, families want to help their children, their aunt, their uncle, brother, sister. They want to help them. But it's hard because they're mentally ill. And there's just absolutely no compassion to let people live outdoors, sleep outdoors. It's not compassion. As a parent, I think we've all heard of tough love. We've got to start with making it safe for the 99.996% of this community. We have some ideas we're bringing forth separate from this, though, and it will help solve this too. And it's called Rescue Compassion City. I'm working on that with Sean Fitzgerald, where we centralize this problem. There's only 1,000 homeless in Marin County. That's 0.004%. And we spend so much money and so countless hours on this. It's really sad. If I was in charge of the homeless, that was my job. And unfortunately, it is an industry. That's the problem right there. You got to incentivize people to really make this happen. To have only 100-something beds, 160 beds in the county when you know there's 1,000 people unhoused. But we also have to make it easier for people to get home. And we all know the story. Maybe many of you don't, but there's a story of a young man named Joey that we got home. And his mom didn't know where he was, and it was a long story. And a lot of people in this community helped him. Long story short, there's other people that want to help their children. Probably half of the people that are unhoused could go home if we made the pathway better for them. Also, last thing, a nice lady, I think on Zoom actually, mentioned the 30s. And, think about it. 17 people, is that the number I heard, that are unhoused in Fairfax? There's 4,000 homes. All those compassionate people out there, once again, it's not compassionate to leave them outside. Bring them inside. Help somebody. But letting them behind the ballpark with the drug use and all that other stuff, that is dangerous to our children. That is dangerous to our seniors. That is dangerous to our community. And we need to move this forward tonight in some way, shape, or form. Can we go back and have a citizens committee to make it better? Yes, but we need to take action tonight. That's my feeling.
Thank you. And we're going to ask, Can we, kind of keep it down a little? And I'm going to move on to whoever else would like to comment about this ordinance.
Well, I have a couple of questions. Chief, could you clarify the fire in the allowance of campfires and that kind of thing in the public domain?
In the
Or
park,
Janet?
in the park, there are some fire barbecues. And so you can have, barbecue fire in there. And I think we have had some reports. I remember when I read out the reports from people who had called in, there have been some, but I think the fire
Camp
department.
stoves, right? So if there were daytime use, is the allowance of camp stoves, like what?
The only place that you can have a fire in the park legally is in the barbecues.
Okay. I also.
No, we can't do that now. Sorry. Just, yeah, no. And legally, yeah, we're not just to have any feedback, but I'd love to talk with you offline about this. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Heather's not here for you to answer this question, but one of the comments we heard was the sort of repeat offender, if you will, in terms of the abatement. Do you have any comment on that, Janet?
Yeah, the court cases don't really address repeat offenders. They address dealing with individuals who are camping, period. And so if they come back to the same spot, I think the repeated enforcement of the ordinance is something that is something they don't want to experience. So the idea is that every time you come back, you're going to be told you have to leave. Every time you come back, you'll be told you have to leave. And that eventually, for better or for worse, people are going to go and find some other place. It is kind of a double-edged sword. I will tell you that people can and probably will, if they want to be left alone, go and find a place where they can't be seen quite as easily and they're not as obvious. And if that goes up into the hills and there are fires and whatnot, that creates its own issue. So this is not a panacea. But there was really no authority for a repeat enforcement type of provision for a repeat offender, because if it's in a different location, then that's an entirely different location. If it's at the same location, you need to be proactive and be on top of it. And the moment you see somebody with a tent or with a sleeping bag and coming back and setting up another encampment, that you notice them again and tell them, no, you cannot be here. And the repeated taking of the belongings, the repeated telling them they have to move and leave is, in practice, turning out to be an effective deterrent. So I don't know that you necessarily have to go to the point of saying somebody is a repeat offender. What I have observed, and not in Fairfax, but in other places, is that people really want to be left alone and they don't want to be hassled. And if they're being hassled and it's a constant thing and you keep coming back and enforcing on them, that they will find some other place to go.
Thank you. And the comment around notice, right? And how to ensure a camper understands what's happening, right? And you said, oftentimes they'll pin the letter to the tent if they're not there, what have you. How, and do we know from HSS, like how do we ensure that the written notice is received, understood, and if there's any dialogue to ensure understanding?
So my understanding, not from Fairfax again, but from other places that have done enforcement actions, is the police department talks with individuals and tells them, explains the notice. I'm giving you this notice. It says you have 72 hours. That means 3 days. That means, today is Tuesday. So come Friday, at this time on Friday, you can't be here. There will be people come. They will take your belongings from you if you have left them here. If you are here, you will have to leave. You cannot be here. So you have this amount of time in which to go find someplace else to be, to remove your belongings. You cannot be here. And that verbal talking to them by the police officers with the addition of the written notice. And then maybe another 24 hours later, the police officer's back. Okay, now you've only got 2 days. You know,
But is the written notice a general, like generic notice, or is it actually to an individual?
it's not to an individual, it's to anyone camping in this particular area. And so the area is,
So when the police are having these conversations, are you capturing the name at that point so we know who we've spoken to?
If we can identify who the person is or know them, then that contact with the law enforcement officer and also that individual will be logged in our CAD.
Okay.
And also the interaction should be captured in body worn camera. So we would have that interaction recorded as well.
Okay. And then, sorry, last question with regard to what Mr. Bragman and Frank raised. Would it be recommended that we reference the other code as far as permitted use? It doesn't seem like there's a point to me to add language when there's another code that says what's allowable. Can we just cross-reference it, or?
I didn't add any language, I removed language. So 12.020 is in code right now. And you see where I put the period after sunrise each day, period. It goes on in the code because this is the part I removed. Without permission issued by the town clerk or designee as provided in 12.36.030, the next section down. And then if you look at 030, it talks about the town clerk or designee is authorized to grant permission on behalf of the town for the use of the town parks, playgrounds, public tennis courts, and central ball field during hours between sunset and sunrise to groups and organizations whenever it appears that, during the use, there will be available sufficient police protection or adult supervision to avoid malicious conduct on the part of any person in the parks, playground, public tennis courts, and central ball field. Period. Permission thus granted to a group or organization shall be construed to be permission to each individual member of the group or party. So I removed that for fear that it might conflict with the procedure laid out in the ordinance to be adopted as far as getting permission from the town clerk or submitting a letter requesting permission. And I don't want to have conflict with that procedure and this procedure. What I left in 12.030 is the last sentence. Public tennis courts for night use will be available for a fee established by town council resolution. I reworded it slightly. Public tennis courts for night use until 9 p.m. will be available from the Fairfax Police Department because I am told that is the procedure. The town council may establish a fee for such use by resolution. So it's really I didn't add this language in. It's here already. I just removed the bit about the clerk deciding that there's sufficient police protection or adult supervision to avoid malicious conduct. I took that out because that frankly is a standard that the clerk should not be exercising discretion to make that determination.
So just so we're all tracking, any group, including the Fairfax Festival, that wants to use the ball field for a movie night, we've had other movie nights distinct from the festival, there's no issue there.
It is not going to be impacted by the anti-camping ordinance, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Egger.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to try a motion and let's see how this flies. There's no ordinance number on what's the ordinance number?
Find yet. We don't assign the ordinance numbers yet until they're.
The ordinance numbers are assigned after the ordinances are adopted.
Oh, so we don't have an ordinance number. Okay, so I would move to waive further reading of the ordinance before us, so we should have a number on it. At ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax. I should say this is a motion to waive further reading of this ordinance and introduce it. An ordinance of the Town Council of Town of Fairfax, and then I'm going to skip down to adding Chapter 9.30, Camping on Public Property, to Title 9, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare. And the purpose of that is to leave the existing ordinance in effect and just to adopt this new ordinance that'll have camping. Now, there would be a section 1 would be as written, section 2 and 3 would be deleted. So section 4 would become section 2. The only thing it would do would be.
I'm sorry, you're going way too fast because I can't vote on this unless you slow down. So can you repeat the sections?
Okay, so right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sections and main sections. And the motion would in effect drop section 2, section 3, those 2 sections. And those are dealing with nighttime use. Permission of the town clerk is amended. In effect, what would remain is section 4 would become section 2 and be chapter 9.30. Camping on public property is hereby added to Fairfax Town Code, Title 9, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare to read as follows, and it'd be as it's written. The rest of it is as written. The only difference is it does not revoke the current code as written.
I'll second that.
So if you'd like for me to, do you have any questions about it or like me to explain what that is?
Well,
Let's do it.
I think for everybody, just to make sure there's understanding here and in the public, what does that mean? What are you referring to, the current ordinance you're talking about?
What council?
Well,
Do you want me to explain it?
this is a new ordinance
Yes,
that's addressing camping
yes,
in Fairfax.
yes.
Has nothing to do with nighttime use of the town park or ball field.
So section,
In effect it does, because it prohibits camping, but the regular ordinance that's in
Right.
effect now that says you need a permit to run a nighttime movie during the festival or Halloween, that remains in effect.
let
The
me
town clerk
try.
issues that.
Let me try to explain. So my recommendation that we modify 12.36020 and 12.36.030, Councilmember Egger does not want to touch the existing code. All he wants to do is adopt a brand new chapter 9.30, camping on public property. So he's leaving the existing 12.36020 and 12.36030 as written in the code. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing that. We haven't enforced those sections. I think they have issues as far as enforcement is concerned, but they can sit in the code unenforced, that's fine. But he is adopting or suggesting that you adopt a new section, chapter 9.30, camping on public property, as written. So any other questions about that? There's a motion and a second.
So there's nothing that would stop us from taking that other ordinance up later and clarifying it or putting it together with other park rules?
That's correct.
And at this point, can you clarify, so for the existing encampment, it's still going to be covered by the rules in the anti-camping ordinance. This is not going to mean that the police are going to go tomorrow and remove those people.
No, you can't use the existing sections that are in the code to remove this encampment in a legally defensible way under the current state of decisional law.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, the current ordinance was never meant to address camping in the park, period. That wasn't the purpose and intent of it. And so by leaving that as it is in effect and just adding this whole new ordinance as a separate ordinance, that's what this motion is intended to
Yes,
do.
I understand what you're saying.
Can I make a suggestion? It's already been suggested, but I'm going to just
Okay, yeah.
emphasize it, if that's okay. Along with seconding this motion, I'd like council to consider, and maybe it comes separately, but I want to reiterate what I've been hearing tonight, and that we put together a citizens oversight committee on the homelessness, the parks, the things like that. And, because we do want to make a difference. And I just think that should be, we may end up making this stronger at some point, but which is what you just said, I believe. So that's what I suggest, is that we put together a citizens oversight committee for the parks and the anti-camping
Do you
ordinance.
want that as part of this motion, or do you want it separately?
It could be a
Can
separate.
we talk about it at future agenda items? Because I think it's a lot,
Well, I
there's a
think-
lot to discuss there. It's not in terms of scope. I'm not saying punt it. I'm saying just not attach it to the motion and discuss it as a distinct agenda
Well, we
item.
can do a second motion. I mean, I'd rather do it separately. I think
Yeah.
that was suggested to me. But I don't know, yeah, I'd like to have right after this, add a motion to start the process, because it takes a while to get the citizens committee together. So we can get a jump start on that. So I would suggest that the second is for the ordinance that Frank just suggested. And I'd like to add for a second motion, a second idea, to start the citizens committee to do better, get their input and come up with ideas and things like that we can make stronger for our town and for our citizens and for people who are homeless as well.
So I wanted to just hold out for a minute because I need to understand better whether that's something we can legally take up right now.
She just suggested it.
And just give me the idea of the process that you'd like.
Well,
you'd
right
see.
now, we have apparently a motion and a second for that motion, which is to waive further reading, and on first reading, introduce Chapter 9.30, camping on public property, as written, leaving out sections 2 and 3 of the ordinance that's in your packet. Now, I understand what Councilmember Garanghelli wishes to do, and I think that needs to be an agendized item that we actually discuss. But we can take that up at future items, perhaps.
Right, because I think that it should be an agendized item personally, just because, and it sounds like we're not really totally done discussing, but because it will take a bunch of time. I think there's some issues about having citizen oversight of law enforcement. I'm not sure that really flies, but it could be useful for some other issues. And, I'm quite grateful that people have tried to be compassionate, but I think that it requires a lot more thought. And so that would be my preference.
So I think we talked about we could discuss it on future agenda items as a future agenda items, which makes sense.
Thank you.
So there's a motion and second. Any other questions?
Yeah, we're going to take a vote. It's just you had your thing on, so I thought maybe we're going to say something. So yeah, we can take a vote at this time, if you like.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Ager.
Aye.
Councilmember Garanghelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler.
Before I vote, just a quick statement. I'm concerned regarding the criminalization of homelessness, including camping bans, bans on sleeping in a car or sleeping, sweeps of encampments. People lose their possessions typically and just move across the street or nearby. We need to create more affordable housing and acceptance of Section 8 and other vouchers, such as veterans, disabled vouchers for housing. I strongly support housing first, but I also support more investment in shelters. With only 161 beds in the counties, it's not enough. There's simply not enough permanent housing. So I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a really challenging issue. We've probably talked about it up here since in my tenure. This is like the 6th or 7th time. And it's not lost on me that it's a week before Christmas. It's really painful vote to be taking right now. That said, the current encampment is above Perry Park is a horrible location. for reasons that we've all heard and know. And I appreciate the citizen. I don't know if we want to call it oversight, but I know that there's a lot of community members that really want to help out. And today I did speak with one of our larger merchants in town that is happy to feed the encampment, the current residents there over the holidays. And so there's things like that that I know that our merchant community wants to contribute. But I think for a future agenda topic, Mike, we need to discuss scope, like Lisa was saying, right? It's not just oversight. It's, how do we help, right? And in my mind. Anyway, I vote yes. Thank you.
Mayor Blash.
Okay, and I feel like I need to say a couple things because I didn't get to say them in discussion. I think that the current location of the encampment isn't ideal. And I also want to take all residents' concerns seriously. I know that there are housed residents who feel unsafe in the park. And, I've been concerned about Fairfax becoming the destination of last resort as other communities pass similar ordinances. However, I'm not really comfortable with a blanket ban on camping in Fairfax because it feels like it's criminalizing homelessness. We've had homeless people here since I've lived here, which was like 2010. And generally speaking, I think that what people have an issue with is the encampment and not so much the fact that we have homeless people in Fairfax. So I'm kind of concerned about people being targeted. And I think our town attorney has done a great job in drafting this ordinance. A couple of the things I just want to say is that, I think we all want to be compassionate. I don't think that this ordinance, we don't feel like it's compassionate to have people living outdoors in the rainy season, but this ordinance is not the compassionate answer to that problem. It'll probably make the situation of most of those encampment residents far worse as they have to move from place to place. Service providers can't find them. It makes service providers have to put more energy into finding people. I have known homeless people, so let's just say you become very anxious about your possessions. You have to cart them from place to place on your back. When you're carrying a big backpack, you become a target of discrimination. You're taking that backpack everywhere because you're so paranoid someone's going to take it. And Marin Transit will not allow people with a backpack on a bus. So if you want to go to another community, you got to walk there. And so it just, there's a lot of issues for me about the unintended consequences of this, also the threat of people moving up into the watershed and setting fires. I'm not so concerned about camp stoves. I use camp stoves in areas where they're concerned about fire, so they tell us to use a camp stove and not build a fire. So I'm not going to say all the things that I wanted to say, but I'm just really concerned about us. There's several women at the encampment. That makes me very concerned because I fear that they are there because they feel safe there, and I don't know what will become of them if they are displaced. I was told that quite eloquently today by both male and female people at the encampment. And I'm just feeling like this is going to be a race to the bottom with other local jurisdictions. And, what we will do will then impact San Anselmo and then, all on down the line with people going to the community that has the least defenses up about taking on unhoused people already. Low-income communities have a higher burden of homelessness and homeless shelters. And so my hope, and I know that this ordinance is going to pass, is simply that we draw on a lot of the goodwill that we're hearing in the community to really look for a solution where we find somewhere to purchase for a shelter or for housing, or that we do locate somewhere for a sanctioned encampment. Although several of us, including Mr. Bragman and I, have looked, and we have limited land here in Fairfax. So I just want to recognize this, but in the end, what I want to say is that we need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I hope that we will, form a committee that will start looking at this issue in a broader light in the future and keep that goodwill going. I just have to vote my conscience on this. I know that sometimes what is popular isn't necessarily right, or at least not right for me, so I'm going to vote no.
3-2, motion passes. Thank you.
Right. So thank you, everyone, for a really good conversation. I think that people had great things to say tonight, and I really appreciate the tenor of the conversation, both on the dais and in the community. And now I would like to move on to the other item on our agenda, which is the petition from the Marin Alliance for Medical Marijuana. And so let's get going with that. Do I need to read the exact title, or can I just say we'll do the next?
No, you can just say it's a resident petition from Marin Alliance for Medical Marijuana.
Okay, and in this case, it's a citizen petition. So I believe that the people from the Alliance are going to give a presentation, and then there will be public comment after that. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, just to remind the council and the community members in the audience that this petition was carried over from the December 4th meeting. In the staff report, it states that the petitioner Lynette Shaw wishes to discuss expediting the process to relocate her existing dispensary to 1593 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard.
Thank you so much. Yes. And I know people are making noise, but I think they're leaving. So I think that's good. We can get started now. Thanks so much.
So we kept this on your agenda just as an update. And the update is this. When we were last here on this item, the property that we're seeking to relocate was up for auction the next day. The next day, when Tom went to the auction site, the bank postponed it until January 9th, your next meeting date. So that is our update. We really don't have any more new information to present to you other than that the bank, which is holding the note on this foreclosed property, postponed the sale until your next meeting, the morning of your next meeting. So I don't know if you have any questions. Lynette's here just to thank you for your help.
And Councilmember Hellman has questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So was it clear to you what your next steps are as far as what you need to do as far as an application to the planning commission? Like your next step isn't coming here.
Our next step is if the council passes the ordinance on the second reading, at that point, we would be referred to the planning commission.
An application is required of the planning commission, and you don't have to wait for that, is my understanding. You should be doing that now. If you want to get in the queue and prioritize at the planning commission, you need to do that. And I'm saying this because I'm a little concerned that a question was asked, like, are we on the December Planning Commission agenda? No, you're not. You need you need to apply. So I just want to make sure that's abundantly clear.
I'm happy to discuss this with you, Mr. Bragman.
Okay. Point made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And would you folks like to make more comments, or do other council members have questions?
Okay. I just wanted to thank the town for helping us move this along as quickly as possible. We have a lot of people that are counting on all of us to figure out the solution, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions from council members, we can open this to public comment on this item. If is anybody wishing to comment? Again, for folks who are out of the room, are there people who wanted to make public comment on this item? How about anybody online?
There are 2 speakers on Zoom. The first speaker is Clinton, followed by an iPhone user. Clinton, you are unmuted.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. The last question was well received from the council member, and you mentioned that you can apply to the planning commission in the city of Fairfax at any time. Have you put into consideration that there's no lease or premises ownership from the applicant on this topic? That's my first question. My second question is, I think we should make this open to all bidders.
Excuse me, I cannot hear you because there's talking in the back. Mr. Bragman and Lynette, could you come back? This is actually pertaining to your item, so.
Thank you.
And I can't hear the person on the Zoom because there's too much talking.
Let me know when you'd like me to continue. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So the first question is can you fast forward an application in the city of Fairfax if you don't have control of the premises? Second question is, as I understand it, the foreclosure judge did not tell them to come back on the 9th. They said it was required to publish publicly the foreclosure so other people can open it up to bid. So I just can't see as a community member how A, they can apply to the planning commission, B, they can assume that they're going to obtain this building through acquisition. And the more important question is, has anybody looked into who her financial backers are? Because considering this isn't open for public competition, should we want to make sure she's not backed by a cartel member or somebody of a nefarious affiliation? I think all these questions are very important for the council to consider. And I have heard the last couple of hearings, and I do really appreciate a lot of the thoughts, but I'm a bit dumbfounded in the fact of I suppose, the lack of research on the topic. Can any of the council members answer if she actually has a lease in place? And is that required in order to go to the planning commission for a remodel on a project to get approved by the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which is California governed, not locally?
Thank you for your comments, and we can't do a back and forth in the meeting. Mr. Bragman?
Just as far as the auction, I do have documentation from the company that is doing the auction, if I could submit it to your clerk. So it documents that the sale was postponed to January 9th.
Okay.
I would just say until the property is acquired, until title is transferred, nobody has a right to give a lease to anyone. Right now, the property is in foreclosure for Mr. Hertz. He went through bankruptcy. As you recall, part of this is to keep Mr. Hertz, an elderly resident, in his apartment. So we're trying to do the right thing here and really there's a lot of synergy involved in this transaction, although there's a lot of moving parts that we're trying to organize too. So we will know more on January 9th.
Thank you. And is there
There is
another?
one more speaker on Zoom, an iPhone user. You are unmuted.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. My name is Matt Greenberg. I was the one last week or a couple weeks ago who handed out the tax burden that Lynette is carrying. I didn't really get a chance to finish last week, so hopefully I can get it in here. I don't think there's one thing that the council members really aren't considering with Lynette. She's out there trying to sell her she's selling to the public parts of her license, which I know she can't sell legally. So our group happened to be one of the groups that was suckered into lending this woman $100,000. There was another group before us that we are well aware of that she also suckered out of a lot of money. So she's out there actively trying to sell her license in order to raise money. So you guys really need to consider, who is this group that's now paying off her taxes, trying to buy this auctioned up property? Who is giving this lady money, and why? She's trying to sell an interest. She's out there, it's not about cannabis with this woman. She's robbing people like us, the public. So you guys need to really consider this as an issue, because she shouldn't be granted this license. It's not fair what she's doing to people. I happen to be a victim of her, and I had respect for her, and I agree with cannabis, and I totally feel like it should be out there for the town of Fairfax, and there should be a license, and there should be a place for people to go get their medication, but not the way she's running her business. It's really shady, and I think that's a very important question that Clinton raised. Who is giving this woman money to buy this property? Who is giving this woman money to stay in operation, and why? Thank you.
There are two more speakers on Zoom. The first one is Ava, followed by Eric.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ava, you are unmuted.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the last two callers were very interesting, but I think some of their questions were answered by the large number of longtime Fairfax residents who spoke in favor and in support of Lynette Shaw and her business operations. As to the question of who is backing her, is she being backed by a cartel? Wow, that is a very interesting premise, which doesn't seem to be very likely. But it does raise questions about, you know, the entire industry, whether it's alcohol or whether it's cannabis, you know, how businesses are perceived. I mean, we could look at, the father of JFK and RFK and what kind of, monopolization of illicit businesses he was running that made the great fortune that gave us one of our greatest presidents. That could have been considered a cartel. I mean, I just think it seems to be an effort to slander someone who's long been of service to the community, and that seems very unfortunate and unfair. Thanks.
The next speaker is Eric. Eric, you are unmuted.
Can we restart the clock too? I see it's still ticking along.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Eric Moss. I'm a San Anselmo resident. I live almost directly across the street from the site that Ms. Shaw is proposing to move her unit there. My questions for the town council, or my comment rather, is for the town council at this point in time. I'm talking to a lot of Fairfax friends, a lot of Fairfax, acquaintances, colleagues who are jumping through hoops to remodel their house, who are jumping through hoops to get meetings in front of this town council or the planning commission, and they are begging to get in front of you guys, or begging to get plans in front of you guys, begging to get an audience, begging to get through the process. And we're rushing through here for someone who doesn't have title, doesn't have a property, doesn't have the lease, and is waiting on an auction. I think this is a bit of an insult to Fairfax residents. Thank you very much, Eric Moss, San Anselmo.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, great. And if there were any, can I ask them to answer any other questions that came up in that, or is that not what we usually do? I guess I'm a little unsure at this point.
It's not what we usually do.
Okay, then I will call it back and see if there is, this is not an item we can take action on, but if there's any conversation that the council needs to take or make at this point, I think we can do that.
I just want to make one comment, which is part of this process is going to the Planning Commission. For people who have concerns, we're not really rushing this through. We made an exception for somebody who's been operating for a number of years in the town and through unfortunate circumstances, not of her own, needs to move. So the Planning Commission will be an opportunity for people to come and weigh in their concerns, their support, whatever. And so that will be an opportunity, and it may take more than one meeting. So, people will be noticed because there'll be a public hearing. Is that correct, Janet? It's a public hearing. So there will be opportunities, and I've seen some emails about rushing this through. The next step requires public input. So people will have an opportunity to speak. So I've said that 3 times, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
I agree with what
Hall.
Councilmember Kohler just shared, and I would consider, what we went through with Element 7. There's a strong community sentiment against formula businesses. So I would encourage you to consider being transparent about who your investors are. Great, because I think that would help the community that is maybe not so sure about this, and so that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
And are there any other comments? Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to the consent calendar.
Thank you, council.
Thank you so much, actually. Okay. So the council may approve the entire consent calendar with one action. Vote in the alternative, items on the consent calendar may be removed by any town council or staff member for separate discussion and vote. Public comment on items on the consent calendar happens once rather than after each individual item. During the public comment period on consent items, speakers may comment on any items from this section of the agenda. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes and may speak only once. Great. So I think unless there's any other comments, we just move to public comment. Is that correct? Yes. So is there public comment?
Hi, Todd Greenberg, downtown Fairfax. Consent calendar, 10 minutes approximately. This is more reasonable this time. Thank God. There's only 4 items here. That still is only 30 seconds per item. Anyway, what I'd like to point out here is the financial statements need to be a separate agenda item rather than just accepted without public discussion going forward. If you read page 2 of the financial statements, as I've pointed out for the past few years, the town of Fairfax is running an operating deficit. This is on the income statement. It says that there is a $1,537,728 shortfall versus revenues that we are receiving. The whole town should be concerned that this budget is spending money that we are not receiving. This council needs to examine the budget and to cut the fat in this budget because it's not taking care of basic municipal government priorities or services, or its priorities are wrong. For too long, they've been spending money that doesn't exist and taxing Fairfaxians who don't have the money to pay for it and selling us down a bumpy road. It's urgent that you spend time and prioritize what your spending is and make cuts to your budget.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mark Bell, Fairfax. I agree with Todd. I think the financial statements need to be a separate item that get discussed in full. Also on number 10, approving the minutes. I guess I have the old agenda. I didn't want to waste the paper. Approving the minutes for September 4th and October 16th. I mean, this was supposed to be in December. Why is there such a lag time? Let alone the fact that they're inaccurate. I read my comments. My comments said, Mark Bell commented that the minutes from what he said were inaccurate. That really doesn't say what I said, does it? I noticed that there are a lot of written reports on council members' assignments, etc., that were not filled out. And as far as waiving the second reading of the absence of quorum, that was taken off?
Yes.
Oh.
We have no second readings on a special meeting.
Oh, so the quorum is going to be on an actual meeting?
They're all actual meetings. It'll be at a regular meeting.
Okay, so it's no longer on the consent calendar. God, I guess I should have taken the new one.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, council. I would like to encourage the council to have the confidence to bring forward our financial statements, explain to us why we have deficits and operating deficits. And then we look at encouraging to hire more consultants, like for instance, addressing our homeless encampment. We're spending money we don't have. And if that's a need that we all choose, that's different than if just the council decides to impale that upon us. So I would really like to see the town council, as we used to do in the old days, have the confidence to say, hey, let's discuss what our monthly disbursements are. And if you went through this a couple of times, it'd be very quick. But we need to really engage the public if you want the public support. So I'm really encouraged by seeing two people from the past that used to participate in an open dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
To have London, Fairfax, I support Mark Bell and Michael's comments. I think I agree. It would be very refreshing to have you guys bring forward the budgets and explain the deficits and have some transparency around this. I think it's great that Frank and Mike are here because they have experience from a different time. And, you know, I think a lot of the residents are tired of just like the notion of opening a fire hose and out of the end of it is our tax dollars. It's insane. And I'd like to see a lot less consultants hired and like Todd said, cut the fat. Let's get back down. It's economics 101. No business could survive like this. So you have to run the town like it's a business, like a mom and pop business, and not like this just endless supply of tax dollars from its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Valerie Gottheim. I just want to back up what the last few people said. And I remember when Frank originally was on the council, we didn't have so many consultants. We didn't spend all this money. People knew how to make decisions. And I want to encourage you guys to make those decisions without spending money that we need for our streets and our potholes and our safety, to not go to outside consultants, but have you guys decide what we're going to do instead of somebody else deciding, who usually don't live in Fairfax. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Lin Bell, I live on Dominga, and I just wanted to add my voice to what these folks are saying. I totally agree with what they're saying. I just want to say that I believe the same thing. So I don't need to repeat what they're saying because they said very clearly what it is. So thank you very much. Just adding my voice. Thanks.
Great. And thank you for your succinctness. Next, please.
Press the button, please.
Sorry. Whoa. I missed a portion of what was being talked about. So I'm just chiming in half-heartedly because I don't know what was said before I walked in. But I understand why we don't need consultants all the time and how we can save money. That makes a lot of sense. My concern is the town council can't make decisions in a vacuum, that you have to get input from everybody, not just the majority voice, but also the minority voice. You need to get people's input. And if that means forming committees or having, I don't know, more meetings, I hate to say, I think it's important that people are heard before you make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, another person. Thank you.
Michael Schroeder, Fairfax. I thought the old agenda of the item of the ADUs was going to be on this, but I guess it isn't. But I want to express my opinion that we need to move forward on the zoning exemption and the parking allowances.
Yeah, we can't actually talk about that now because it's not on the agenda.
Okay,
so I'm sorry to make you come and
No, it's
say
okay.
that, but I think it will be on the January agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Sorry to make you wait here so long for that. Is there anyone online?
There is one speaker on Zoom. Emily, you are unmuted.
Hi, I just wanted to reconfirm my suggestion at the last meeting that you have oversight committees when it comes to major decisions that affect our community gravely, and that would actually uplift the town council on board right now. And I think it's very, very, very important that you include the community in all of these major decisions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, is there anyone else online?
There are no more speakers on Zoom.
Great. So I'm going to reiterate that when we do the agenda, that people should comment on items on the agenda, and unless it's public open time, although, some things are kind of related, so it's sometimes hard to tell. So thank you, everybody, for your comments. We're going to briefly say that the council reports and comments, as someone mentioned earlier, we don't do those verbally anymore. They're on the consent calendars. If you want to read what people are doing, they're in there. And we're going to move on to future agenda.
I think we need a
sorry.
motion. I'll make a
Oops.
motion to
Sorry.
approve the
Oops, I
consent
forgot to vote.
calendar.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to second it.
Okay.
Councilmember Ager.
Whoa, wait a minute. I haven't had a chance to speak. I mean,
Would you
this
like
is
to
the-
make a comment?
this is the first time I've looked at a financial statement and disbursement reports. So I have a whole bunch of questions, and I thought maybe the town finance manager would be here tonight, so
Right, so
we could
I-
get some questions asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So one of the problems I see all the time is the town council does not require all department heads to be at every meeting. I don't, folks have questions, we have questions, and I think we need department heads at every town council meeting. That means public works director, the finance director, we've got the police chief here. And at times, if it's a fire issue, we need a fire chief here. Back in the day, we always had department heads at every council meeting. And when the council members had questions, we could get some answers.
Right.
So I just had a bunch of questions on the sheet tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think generally speaking, we don't make a lot of comments on items on the consent unless we've pulled them off the agenda.
Okay, excuse
think-
me. I would ask that this be pulled from the consent calendar.
So Frank, I so appreciate that you're looking at that report with the fine tooth comb. I see all your highlights, but I look at them too. I know Barbara does. I know Lisa does. We write up our questions and we send them to Mr. Vivrette, and then he responds. And if you want to, create transparency about what questions you have, you air those at the time we vote. You say, I had some questions about, and here's what I understood, and you can share back with the public. But if you were to ask every single one of those questions, I'm seeing 12 or more highlights. I mean, I personally don't think it's realistic to have Mr. Vibrett here every single meeting and answering all your questions. And I do recommend that you email him and meet with him on a regular basis.
How much do we pay him?
also-
Do you know how much we pay him?
We're not getting into that, Frank.
So what I want to suggest, can I suggest something here? Is that, you might want to clarify for us, town attorney, when it's the right time to pull an item from the agenda. But I also want to suggest that I would have something when we move on to future agenda items about how to handle this. That's all.
You have a motion and second on the table, I believe.
I'd like to,
I'd like to. Yes, I can call the question. I can call the question.
Public is not speaking.
Excuse me,
at
we
this
can't have
point.
the public yelling, and thank you, Michael, but not right now. We can call the question, which would mean we just need to vote on it right now, up or down.
So we're just doing a vote. If it fails, fine. Okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Ager.
I just want to say one thing, is that from my memory, that right before the motions are made, the council members are able to say something. Like Frank would have said, I like to pull this. So because we didn't get that opportunity, I'd like to kind of rewind this a couple minutes and say what we want to say. I have something I wanted to say, and then make the motions, or at least not make, at least be able to pull it.
Can you say?
So once the public spoke, we should be able to say something in response or ideas, and
Right.
someone makes the motion.
Okay, so were you going to say something, Town?
No, Councilmember Gangelli should be able to speak.
Great,
but
thank you.
do have a motion and second on the table.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Great.
I do, because, yeah, I agree with Frank that we should be able to, and really most of the public, that in the future, and maybe, and pull this one, maybe if it's possible, that we are able to ask questions, and I 100% agree that our management should be at meetings. It's not just council members that might have questions. The public might say something to us that we need answered. That's the way I recall it being done, and it's pretty effective. I was a little shocked to see nobody at the tables. So anyway,
I think
so
I
I
did-
would agree with Frank to pull this, and then I would then approve the rest of it if that's okay.
Councilmember Garangelli, I think I did mention that the manager had a family emergency, or
I know
she
that
would have
part.
been here.
Well, no, I know that we're talking about the finance director. We're talking about all the other positions.
So I might also
I know the
just
emergency.
note before you decide whether or not we're pulling this item, the finance director is not online. The town manager is at a family emergency. So there's no one here to answer any questions you have about the financial reports in this moment.
Right. I would like to suggest that we actually have a future agenda item where we have the finance director come and describe how to read these reports. And we do have also a budget meeting every year where we go over in depth. Okay. So maybe we do, but I think it would be really helpful in the future. Yes, I see him now, to actually have a formal presentation, because frankly, we cannot have all of our staff sitting here until late at night every time we have a meeting. We need to know in advance that there are going to be questions of them, and that's only fair to them. And we need to be mindful of our budget. And so if we want to pull this item, then we do have our finance director here miraculously, and he can answer questions, but I would like in the future for there to be a formal presentation, because I feel like people don't understand the budget. It is mysterious. They don't understand the financial reports, but they especially also don't understand the overall budget. And we do have a budget meeting in May, which goes into this in great depth. So that will be another opportunity for people to get more information about how the budget is managed. But if you would like to, if you're ready to answer questions on this, we can go ahead and do that.
First, I'd like to comment that I do attend every council meeting that I have a council agenda item on. I've been over at the town hall watching and doing work at the same time. I find that being here doesn't allow me to do additional things. So I've been listening to all your comments, and I'm happy to respond to things that I'm able to, but keep in mind that some of these things may involve research, which is why sending me the questions ahead of time will help expedite getting you the answers that you need.
And I did also just want to mention in this, when we go on to discuss this, that we should be careful about pulling items off of the consent calendar, only because, we have had a lot of requests from community members that the meeting's not run until late at night. So unless it's really absolutely necessary, we should avoid it. We are not yet hitting the 10 o'clock rule. And if it feels important to people to pull this at this time, then we can go ahead and do it. But I would think in the future, we might want to have a formal presentation on this. Thank you.
I can answer a question or two if they're ones. Todd had a question as to why we have deficits on the financial statements.
That's not my.
No. Frank's questions.
Okay, that was a
That's fine.
community
I can
question.
do
This
that.
is Frank's. Okay.
So I would just, trying to get a handle on the reporting. One of my concerns is the condition of our streets and roads and sidewalks in town. And so I had just a couple of questions. For instance, Fund 44 is go refunding bonds. And I'm not sure what that purpose is. What is that purpose of go refunding bonds? What is GO refunding bonds?
GO means general obligation bonds. These are bonds that were passed back in 2000 and issued between 2000 and 2006. They were bonds that several of them have been refinanced during the time period that I was here. We refinanced at least two of those issues. That's a debt service fund. All of that money is was obligated at the point at which the bonds were issued, and the amortization schedule said, we're going to pay this amount on these dates, and that's what we've been doing since 2006 or thereabouts.
Are any of these bonds for road improvement at all?
All of them were for road improvements.
That's the road improvement bond measure K that I think was on the agenda when you both were on council.
Okay. Up there of Fund 22, it says MES, I guess that's Measure A. Oh, Measure A TAM Transport Fund. Should that be Measure M?
We don't have a Measure M. These things have been
Well, that's revenue from other
reissued
agencies.
all along.
Oh.
22 is a TAM bond, or not bond, but it's the
So it's,
transportation fund for monies that we receive through that.
It's page 3.
Yes. Well,
It's 190,624. It says revenue from other agencies. And I'm wondering, are those the roadway, the countywide roadway funds?
page 3.
Well, there's no page number on it. Well, actually, yeah, it's page
Yeah, at
3
the
of 5.
bottom,
Page 3 of 5. Right in the beginning.
Each report has its own page numbers. So which report are we talking about?
The page.
Well, Mike's looking for that. So there's Measure A, which is Transportation Authority of Marin has those funds, and we were awarded some funds, and I believe that's 190,000. I gave Mike a copy of the report since he didn't have it.
Right. Yeah, that's the budget that we have. That's what we expected when we did the budget back in May that we would be receiving for the year.
From the county of Marin. It's the
From the county.
countywide bond
From the
measure.
county, right.
Okay, but that's for roadway funds, right? For fixing
Correct. Those are for
streets,
roads. And you'll find that there are actually transfers budgeted over to the capital projects, to the roads to use those funds.
So with that amount of money comes in every year.
A different amount comes in each year. It's dependent on what kind of projects that we show them that we're able to do. So if you look at the history of it, sometimes we receive a little, sometimes we receive a lot.
But do we get that amount of revenue every year?
Not every year, no.
It changes?
It changes.
Do we make requests or does it come in automatically?
Maybe I can just add something.
You can-
So Councilmember Cutrano was our representative on TAM, and in the past, John Reed was the representative on TAM. So they go to those meetings and put forth what we're interested in funding, and that is the whole Transportation Authority of Marin, which is a big board. So some years, I think we've gotten maybe 100,000 or less. It depends on what the group decides on. So there's no guarantee of 190,000. Those were for specific projects. They were not for just general use on roads, correct?
Correct. Those are project oriented. We put projects before them. They evaluated them in comparison to what all the other cities wanted and granted us that amount.
Do we know if any of these funds going towards Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, our main thoroughfare?
If you look at the budget that you have, it details what these funds have been allocated for.
Okay.
So that's not going to be in your financial statement, but it will be in a budget.
So I'm over on page 1 of 5. It's the next little category. And I'm looking at 101-010-117. It says property tax in lieu, VFW. Is that the motor vehicle in lieu funds?
Those are motor vehicle in lieu funds, right?
That's $900,000.
That's what is in the budget, yes.
Do we get about that much every year?
I don't have the actuals in front of me, nor to be able to tell you that.
Okay, but do those go into a roadway capital improvement fund, or where does the money go? Where does it go to
Basically,
general fund?
we do our road expenses out of several different places. The first place is in the general fund. We have a street fund with a street department within that, which has 4 personnel, equipment, trucks. They go out, repair, do patches. That's road expenses that are incurred within the general fund. We also have street lighting. We also have other things that are street related within the general fund. Then we also have in the capital projects funds, Fund 51 and Fund 53, various street projects that are over there also. So the 900,000 that we have is more than expensed within the general fund by the expenses that we've got for Public Works Administration, which we allocate about 50% of that department, that's 510, and the street fund, which is 511, towards road expenses.
Okay, so we're paying salaries with some of those funds.
The money is not specifically allocated to that purpose. We do have salaries within the street fund, but we have street expenses, 511, Public Works Administration, and 510, and the general fund transfers funds also to the capital projects funds. So in total, the amount that the general fund is transferring over to Capital Projects Fund 51 and 53 more than exceeds the 900,000 that we've got as revenue within the general fund.
Over on page 2 of 5 of this category, it's got item 01-100-936, and it's retirement, transfer from retirement, $2 million. Is that part of our unfunded pension liability?
No, not at all. The amounts that we receive for the transfer are amounts that are deposited into Fund 6, which is the pension override tax that we collect and has been in effect since about 1980.
I know that, yeah. But I'm talking about the $2 million.
Yes, that's the money that's been collected from the pension override tax, which is collected in Fund 6 and transferred over to the general fund, where all of our pension expenses are.
Okay. Here we've got, I'm now on page 1 of 11. It's a different set, and it's about the independent auditor. And it says outside services, $10,000 is budgeted, then professional service, $52,800. Have we let a contract for this year's audit yet?
I'm actually in the process right now of working with the auditors for the past 2 weeks and giving them all the information that they need. So we're in the process of doing the audit currently, but we also have other expenses that are incurred which relate to the audit, one of which is amounts that we have to pay CalPERS to generate certain reports. Also, we have a requirement to create a report for GASB 175, which is our OPEB or other public or other outside benefits for retired persons. They have to do actuarials, and we pay for those expenses out of this department.
Okay. How often do we change auditors? How often?
The audit firm has been there for 10 years or more.
The same audit firm?
They change partners within it on a rotating basis and personnel within it on a rotating basis, so that we're not just dealing with one person for a long period of time.
But we have the same firm, same auditing firm. Is it, I don't know, I've dealt with a lot of auditing firms for public agency.
Mays and Associates.
Is still Mays and Associates?
Still Mays and Associates, but it's been a different partner. It's changed about 3 times since I've been in working here.
So do we put this out for bid from time to time? How do we arrive?
We put it out to bid when I came here. I think before that, was it around 2013 or 14? I think we put out an RFP and they came in as the low bidder.
Yeah, I think that was about the time frame. I'm the only one who's still here from that period. And they submitted the low responsive bid.
Is it like an evergreen contract? It never ends, or what's the deal?
No, it's 5-year with extensions that are available.
Oh, okay. Will there be an opportunity to change auditors in the next year or so?
If we wanted to, we certainly could. That requires an RFP.
That would be something to bring up at the retreat in February, Frank, or at the other meeting in May, the all-day session.
Okay, that's good for me.
Mike, did you have a question?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah, thank you for also the questions. Are there, Mr. Egger, did you have more questions of Mr. Vibrat?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I just wanted to check I think we do have to do public comment if we pulled it, right? I think we officially pulled it here.
I don't think you officially pulled it, but
Okay.
they've already given the public a chance to comment on these items.
Okay, thank you. So no, not right now. We heard from you earlier. I want to thank Councilmember Egger for the really good questions and suggest that we, pursue this in the future to have a, good presentation so the public understands. And Mr. Gueringo, did you get all your questions answered at this point?
In the request, future items, I'm going to mention something.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the
All
table.
right. So let's go ahead and do the vote.
Councilmember Egger.
Show me abstaining on item number 4. I was not on the council for those minutes.
Councilmember Garanghelli, excuse me.
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hellman.
I've been remiss in submitting my monthly reports, and I will catch up next month. I've had some medical issues with my mother. Anyway, sorry.
Mayor Blash.
Aye.
You can show me as a yes on items 1, 4, I'm sorry, items 3, 5, and 6. I'm just abstaining on item number 4, the minutes, because I was not on the council at that time.
Just a note, in the future, if you read the minutes, you can vote on them. But, everybody decides what they want to do.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone for your patience. Thanks for the great questions. And also thanks for people guiding me since this is my first full meeting. Appreciate it a great deal. I believe that we now are moving on to future agenda items. Is that correct? I have
There was a council reports and comments, brief announcements, of anything of interest.
Thank you. Okay, I thought I said that, but I think I did that out of order. So I did say previously that the council reports are on the consent calendar. Are there any other announcements from council members?
There's a Hanukkah celebration on the 26th at Perry. Not
It's
at Perry
actually a
Market.
menorah lighting. It's called a menorah lighting.
Okay, Barbara. I'm mentioning a community event at the Bolinas Park. So if you want to correct me on the name of it.
I'm correcting
It's
you
celebrating
because
Hanukkah with a menorah lighting.
we
Thank
try
you.
to stay non-denominational on all
A
events.
menorah is a symbol of the Jewish faith, which is Hanukkah. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? No. Okay, moving on to future agenda items. I did want to mention that I do think this is something, I've talked to other towns about how they do their processes, and I do think that we, so I'm letting, people go ahead and pull items from the consent calendar because that seems to be how most people do it. I would like us to vote on agenda items just because they're big ticket items. They require staff to do a lot of research. They require time at a council meeting. And so I want to say, I hope that we will vote on them, or that I want us to vote on them, and that, I think things can come up again in the future. And if, you're somehow able to convince another person to vote with you, another 2 people, you should be able to get your item on the agenda. So I do want to ask people to talk about whether they have future agenda items at this time, and also clarify that we will have a council retreat in February and then a budget retreat in May, at which some larger items might be appropriate. Thank you.
I have some. Oh, go ahead.
So let's
You
start.
No, go ahead. I was just going to, we used to publish future agenda items, and I don't know why, but they stopped being included in the packet. And I talked to the mayor earlier today, and I'm hoping we can get support. And Christine, if you could pass on to Heather, whatever we agree as, a quorum to have on a future agenda, there should be a running list, may or may not have a date assigned to it, but the public should know what's on the docket in terms of the next, 3 to 6 months. And there's always competing priorities, and that's part of the mayor's role, but I'd like to go back to providing that transparency.
So is that a future agenda item, or how are you?
No, I'm asking town staff to include in the packet what the future agenda items are.
Okay.
Like they used to, and
right.
stop doing for reasons that are unknown to me.
I mean, I think one thing that other towns do is a forecast of what they foresee coming up regularly, so every year, which gives people an idea of what kinds of issues and concerns we're going to be dealing with that we can project in the future. So that might be another suggestion, which is just the regular things that come up again and again, so that we can then think about how additional agenda items on top of those could fit in.
Right. Like if Mike suggests something this evening and we all agree, it should be captured, and it may or may not have January or February next to it, but at least he'll have the peace of mind knowing that it hasn't been forgotten. It is going to get prioritized. That's really the objective of that. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I did want to add also that when we do agenda items, future agenda items, there's no guarantee it's going to be the next meeting. It's going to be the meeting that it could be fit into. So there you go.
Okay, can I make?
Excuse me, Mayor, an agendized item shall allow comment.
I'm sorry, it's not time for public comment. So yeah, we'll do that after
Okay,
this.
for this
Yeah.
subject.
Yes, thank you after this. Yeah, thank you.
So I can make a few
Yes, please do.
items. Okay. So I'd like to see for the future agenda that we put together a citizens oversight committee on the budget. And also, I had mentioned it earlier, but the park ordinances, the homeless ordinances, the citizens want a committee where they can give us their input in broader terms. And this is all tied into the budget, but I really think there's somewhat, in my estimation, there's somewhat of an emergency budget situation in town that we should look at. And I would say as quick as we can, and I think you mentioned May, but that we should look at the budget, have some sort of workshop as soon as possible, because we just need to do that. There's 2 new council members, and is nothing wrong. I mean, because this for the year, there's 6 months left, right, to go on what's happened. And so I think you would like some of our ideas, and I'd like to have that type of budget workshop to where we can, midterm kind of maybe either agree to keep it the way it is or maybe shift some things around. That's my thought.
Okay, other agenda items or comments?
I'll just make a comment. I would suggest that the 2 new council members sit down with Michael Vivrette to have kind of more explanation of the budget that exists, rather than a workshop, which is what we do later in the spring for the subsequent budget. And I think that will help answer some of the questions that people have. I just have a simple one, which is there was a lot of rules or laws that changed the accessory dwelling units, and I think there was somebody that was here for that. And that's not something that the council takes up immediately. It goes to the planning commission first. So I think you mentioned to that gentleman that was here, that doesn't come to the council, that affects the planning commission first. So I think there's probably other laws that planning needs to look at, planning commission needs to look at, but I just want to throw that one out because he was here for that item.
I really think he might have been here for short-term rentals, don't you think?
Well, he said ADUs.
I know he did, but
Okay, well,
that's what I think he meant.
Yeah, because he
Okay.
said seen something on the agenda and thought that it was going to be this meeting.
okay. Well, I heard ADUs, but all right. Okay.
So I'm a little confused on what the process is here, but I'd like to comment on Mike's 2 items. So I'll echo what Councilmember Kohler shared, that I really recommend that the learning curve shouldn't be that steep for you because you've been in this role before, right? So I highly recommend that you sit down with Mr. Vivrette and walk through it. I don't know if you know my professional background, but 22 years working for a Fortune 500 financial services company. Every meeting I went to for those 22 years were finance companies, and were finance meetings essentially. And I will tell you that it is not easy to understand this budget. There's pieces like we were talking about for CIP and pavement. It's in different places. It's not totally intuitive. And it took me a while, and he will attest, I asked lots of questions in the beginning. And frankly, I am trying not to get offended because he does a good job. This council does a good job. We are not in debt. There's not overspending. Every council in the county and the state used consultants for the housing element. We have a very small staff, and we do a really good job. So I appreciate the scrutiny. I really do. I'm all about it. But you need to do the work and meet with the finance director. So please do that.
By the way, I have actually met with them.
And you walked through the budget.
A fair amount of it. There's a lot more questions, of course, but yeah, we spent an hour.
Okay, so please do that before the February 12th meeting and before the May meeting, because otherwise you're just going to waste our time. Like, come and learn and come prepared, please. I please ask you that. I'm not in favor of I would like to have that conversation about an oversight finance committee after you have spent time with Michael Vivrette. I'm voting no on that item. And as far as the homeless oversight, I don't want to call it oversight. I would rather call it engagement or something. It has a tone that we're doing something wrong. And I think that's the wrong tone. I think we want to work together collaboratively with the community. There's nothing, we want to work together, right? So can we just set that tone? And as far as the finances is concerned too, the community can ask tough questions, and they can write to us, and they can challenge all they want, right? But does that mean we have to set up an oversight committee? No, they can continue to ask. They can continue to ask and challenge. That's part of the public process. But until you make a case for why we need this oversight, because we are not in debt, despite what some of your associates say, we are not in debt.
That's, but okay, I understand what you said. That's not the process of what we were looking to do. And we can push it off. We don't need to figure that out right now. But it's a lot more entailed than just understanding these numbers. There's a lot more to it. It's like a lot of things. And I'm not going to go into detail now, so we'll save it for another day. But
let's punt it.
There's a lot of things in the budget. It's not just the numbers. It's all kinds of things. The
budget is only numbers. What do you mean? The budget is only
as
numbers.
An example, by the way, I run 6 businesses too, so I understand. So it's where are you going to put the money? Are you going to put them into the streets? Are you going to put them all into personnel? So I don't want to have that debate right now.
Okay, we'll learn the budget and let's talk about it.
It's not on the agenda, so we just need to, it's kind of a delicate balance here because we want to, sort of discuss that why we want to have it there or why we don't want to have it there, but it's also like we can't really get into it because it's not on the agenda. So thank you. So what I'm going to do is just take suggestions of agenda items, and then I think we can vote on them. Does that sound like process? Okay. So other people who have items that they would like to see on a future agenda, and I mean council members. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you down there.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to have a discussion of the town council here, just creating a task force of residents and merchants to investigate the pros and cons of Fairfax becoming a charter town. Sausalito is currently in the process of doing that, and I would just like to have this town council discuss those options for Fairfax as a possibility. But there's a lot of information that's available to us.
Great. Anything else?
So when you say task force, you're making the distinction from a committee because a committee would be staffed and supported by town staff. So a task force is more like what we did for COVID, which was not no town resources were used in terms of meetings, scheduling meetings and posting meetings. You're talking about a separate.
Well, it would be a town committee,
Oh, okay.
a task force. It would be very loosely worded as far as how it's going to function. And we just bring them together and either have one or two council members meet with them, maybe the planning commissioner to meet with them, and look at these options. Sausalito's going through that process right now. And the intent is to possibly give the town of Fairfax a little more leverage when it comes to land use issues and revenue issues.
So,
and
yeah, sorry. So this is like a really huge issue, and it's something that I would like to see brought up as whether or not we want to make it a goal when we do our council retreat, which is when we set our goals for the year, because this is a big overarching item that requires a lot of staff time, a lot of community time, and would fundamentally change Fairfax. So I think I would like to see it not on a regular town council agenda yet, but something that we discuss whether we want to make it a goal during our council retreat in February. That's my suggestion.
I think that's a great idea.
But would the goal be yes or no? Or how are we going to be informed before making that decision?
I think
May?
the
Just to
goal would
clear.
be to whether or not you want to explore it.
Okay. So with the exploration of.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I think it would be.
Okay. So we have a number of items. I'm going to try to see if I can get them all right because we had different recommendations of future agenda items, and I might make one as well. But right,
She's not done.
I'm not done. We're not done
right now.
I just need to lay out what we have, and we're not done yet. So we'll call on you when it's time. Okay. So I would also actually. Well, I'll hold off on this until the next meeting. So one of the things that has been suggested is a Citizens Oversight Committee on the budget. Another one was a Citizens Oversight Committee on park ordinances. I'm not sure if that includes the anti-camping ordinance or not. So we might need clarification. And then a workshop on the budget was another suggestion. And then finally, whether or not we should have on the agenda becoming a charter city. So I think those are all the things that people had suggested as future agenda items. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Great. So that said, I think we can move on to public comment. Great, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I'd like to do for a future agenda item is bring forth a proper process for allowing the public to make input on the consent calendars and pulling items as we used to for the first 15 years that I came to these council meetings. Second, for a specific thing for the finance, and I appreciate Michael Vivrette, I would like to have a agenda item actually explaining to the general public and to Stephanie, because I think it would benefit her, on how we refinance pre-existing bonds from higher rates to lower rates, where those funds are then put, how we're extending the length of those bonds, and what the additional debt we're incurring, even though in effect we're refinancing those things, throwing them into the general fund without putting them into a specific account where we could have retained earnings and keep those funds completely allocated for the purpose of the original language of the original bond, such as for something as a road improvement. I would also support future agendized items, bringing forth citizen oversight committees, so we can review these things, such as the camping ordinance and the financials for our town. I would also encourage a future agendized item that requests people to say where they're from when they come and speak. Thank you.
It's illegal. Unless you're going to speak. You certainly can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Todd Greenberg, here giving you reasons why you would be wise to properly represent the people of Fairfax by actually having these committees. I want to share with everybody who's listening that I'm one of the few members that has gone to the annual retreats and the budget workshops in the past years. I want to share with them what my experience was this last year at the budget workshop, which then Mayor Kohler presided over. There were 3 members of the public there for most of the day. Most of the day, I repeat. 1 member on the Planning Commission did not speak. I was first to speak. I was given 2 minutes to speak on the entire budget. This was supposed to be a budget workshop meant to be constructive. I was given 2 minutes and then cut off. The town's former auditor of 50 years ago, Art Wasserman, who I did not know at the time, thought what I was saying was important, and he offered to yield his time. But I was prevented. Then Mayor Kohler, said, no, you're not allowed to speak and utilize his time. Being so discouraged, he didn't even speak. I think an important thing for the public to notice or be made aware of is this town is paying a significant amount in taxes and debt service every single year because this town has not been prudently financially run. That number needs to be made public. You need to have a prioritized, ranked set of spending goals.
Thank you. That's enough. Thank you so much. We'll take that into.
See what I mean?
And are there other members of the community who would like to speak? Yes, thank you.
Comment, regardless of the subject?
No, it's a comment on the agenda items that were just proposed.
Oh, okay. I'll wait till a later time.
That will be, and we'll have open time for public comment on the January 9th meeting, but not at a special
Not today.
meeting. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thanks so much. And can somebody turn off the microphone unless anyone else is going to speak? Thank you so much. And is there anyone online who wants to
There are
comment
2
on this?
speakers
Okay,
on
great, thank you.
Zoom. The first speaker is Emily, followed by Kirsten. Emily, you are unmuted.
You again. I'm encouraging the business department.
Hold on just a moment. I'm sorry.
People behind me that I'm allowed to
Emily, hold on
propose a
just a minute.
future agenda. That's what the people behind me just said. They said, I'm allowed to propose a future agenda.
You can comment on the future agenda items.
That were presented? Can you clarify? You can comment on the future items that were presented.
But am I allowed to propose a future agenda item?
Town attorney, can you?
Future agenda items are for council members to propose. If you have something that you would like to have brought forward by a council member, I suggest you contact one of the council members.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just put in there that, yes, you can email us. A lot of us will meet with you one-on-one or talk with you by phone. You can write us. And of course, you can always make comments in meetings. So thank you. Sorry for the confusion there.
So we have Emily online. Emily, you are free to speak.
Okay, thank you. I'm just encouraging the business department to present a detailed presentation of first interim, second interim, and adopted budget and confirmed audited budget. And there should be a community budget oversight committee, which I would be nominating myself to be the first person to be on. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kirsten. Kirsten, you are unmuted.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm just commenting. I might be a little confused and I apologize. There was an agenda item suggested by Frank Edgar regarding the charter city. Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. I just want to support that. I'm a little concerned when Barbara Kohler said that she wanted to just decide in the retreat in February to whether that's of interest or not. And I would like to just support Frank in proposing the charter city idea. I don't know if he has plans to create any kind of presentation, but I personally would like the I would like this presented in a more public manner so that citizens can get involved. A charter city gives local governments more authority to make our own rules and respond to, citizens' needs. And the state's really doing a number on us with these housing mandates. And I think this is an idea possibly to explore regarding getting more of our power back, our local power back, regarding what the state's taken from us recently. And so I just want to support possibly putting that on the agenda earlier and having more citizen engagement around it. And maybe an encouragement, if Frank is willing to do this, to present to the public some of his ideas rather than have to wait till February. I think it's kind of an urgent matter. Thank you very much.
There are no more speakers on Zoom.
Okay, so I think we need to move down the list of possible future agenda items and vote on them. And again, I think I am correct in saying that just because if they don't get voted on now, voted for now, that they can be brought up at a later date, and it's possible that people will think that they are relevant at that time. So let's go in the order that we started with. So citizens, and I wanted to add a couple things. I'm sorry, and I missed that part. I don't know if I can add them now because we did have comments. I do think that it would be good to have a presentation on the financial reports that kind of goes over them at some point in the future. And I will probably raise this really at the retreat. I would like us to discuss ways that we are going to reach out to the community and engage and educate. And those may take different forms, but that's what I would like to see probably on the agenda for the council retreat. Thank you. No, in general, not on the finance item. So that's a whole lot of items, and let me just go back through here. So the first one that we heard about was a citizens oversight committee on the budget. Town Clerk Foster, how do we usually do this? Do we ask for someone to move it, or do we just vote up and down on the things? We have never had this many before, so.
From my recollection, we haven't voted on the items. The mayor just takes them into consideration for whether or not they are to be included on an upcoming agenda and which upcoming agenda they are to be included on.
Okay. I'd like to just get an idea of how many people think it's a good idea to put on a formal agenda the oversight committee on the budget. So maybe we can just do a show of hands. Thank you. So how many people on the council say yes? Like a citizens oversight committee on the budget? Okay, so I'm seeing one, so I'm not going to forward that one for now.
We're voting.
Yes, we're asking you guys.
Well, I didn't
you guys
realize you were
sorry.
asking us. I
Okay.
thought you were asking them out there.
No. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so there's just two. This can be raised again in the future. I do want to suggest that this one could be brought up again after we have more time for council members to meet individually with Mr. Vivet about the budget, and possibly after the budget meeting. Okay. How about, okay, so another one that's related is workshop on the budget, formal workshop on the budget. And I'm going to ask for clarification from staff. So we do a day-long budget workshop, right? And then you present more information about the budget after it's in play, right?
Basic budget cycle is that you have your retreat, you come forward with the goals and things that you've got. Through Heather, we generate a budget that helps meet those things. I put together a draft budget, which is the discussion item at the budget workshop that we have, usually at the beginning of May. Based on that, there's input to change things, increase funding for this, decrease funding for that. That helps to generate a proposed budget, which comes to the first budget hearing. This last year we did that beginning of May, somewhere in that time period. And the first budget hearing then generates additional changes that becomes a document that is the adopted budget, which is the final one, which is discussed at the second budget hearing. During the year, I have interim financial statements, which are cash basis statements. They're not accrual. So the budget, the financial statements that they've got now do not include any of the property taxes. We just received $4 million, which is our first share of property taxes. So any deficit that you see on a cash basis is now a cash surplus because we've actually received those kind of funds. When we've gone through 6 of those periods, then usually based on the December statement, I do a mid-year budget presentation, which is usually, I think, March meeting, or, we may have done a February meeting in the past, but I do that based on the December statement. And that gives you an update on where we are for the budget during the current year.
So there will be something in February or March that describes better where we're at.
We will have an agenda item, which is a presentation of how we're doing on the budget.
Great, thank you. Okay, so in terms of a workshop on the budget, can I see a show of hands who would like to see an additional, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
So the proposed is just to have a pre-workshop from earlier than the workshop that we already have planned? Is that?
I want to clarify. We have almost double the budget of revenues than we had 10 years ago. The amount on a percentage basis, the amount of money we spend on police and fire on a percentage basis, about 9% less than it was 10 years ago. Today it's less percentage-wise. These are percentages because there's more revenue. And my contention has been all along, I think others agree, that we have money we need to find in our budget, and it could be about redistributing the money, looking at each category, staffing the whole thing.
Got it.
We
Got
need
it.
to get, hold on, we need to get more money into our streets. That's the whole purpose of this workshop.
Slide on that. Can I just tell Mike? So Mike, I think you're raising some good points, but get informed on, come up with some ideas as far as where this money is hiding, right? Before you come to the budget workshop.
I will.
Great.
I promise.
Right, so I'm going to keep saying, it sounds like we have a lot of meetings on budget items already, but we can vote up or down on this. So I want to see a show of hands of how many people think we need an additional workshop on the budget. And other than the one we're having in March or February and the one in May and the couple after that. So earlier than February or March. Okay, so that's one hand. I guess we're not doing that one. And then the other one I need a little bit of clarification on is the park ordinances. Are you talking about the group of ordinances like, no smoking, no alcohol, no after dark? Or are you including the ordinance about anti-camping?
The way I would explain it is that there was a lot of public comment tonight on how they wish they were involved with certain decision-making when it came to the writing of that particular ordinance. But more than that, I think it's like people had concerns about drug use at the creeks, private property issues. There's just were a lot of comments, and they all asked for, by the way, if there was some way to have some sort of committee. We don't have to call it a name that nobody likes, but whatever name you like, that people get together and it's like an advisory board of some kind. That now they're not just waiting for an ordinance to come out. They've advised, and you can take it or leave it. You're our legal counsel. You're doing a great job. We've had great discussions, so I appreciate that. And that's why, that whole public participation thing, I think people would like some participation, advance
Right. Okay.
Can I-
So, and
Can
let's
I
not
just
clap.
make
We
a
need to just move
suggestion
on
before
for a
you
second.
go on?
Yes, please.
Mike, Janet mentioned that subsequent to this ordinance, she would like to at some point put together all the park rules and regulations. And that is not an ordinance. That is, there's stuff all over the place. And I think
Clean it up.
to me, what I'm hearing from you, but I could be wrong, is that's probably the appropriate place to have such a group involved.
Advising or input.
Input. So to me, that,
So Janet wanted to clean up a lot of these
but that's a
rules.
resolution. It's not an ordinance.
Okay.
But
Rules, ordinances, regulations, the public wants to come together. I'm not sure how they get on this board. That's something for us to decide. So it's not anything earth shattering. It's just public participation at a little different level. And I think that we would advance things quicker, by the way, possibly.
can I get I heard a comment from the town attorney.
Well, I was just going to say, why don't I pull together a resolution, show where things come from and why, and then have that be something that people can comment on, work on, add to it, make suggestions, do whatever. Would that be helpful to give a place to start? Because we already have a number of ordinances.
That's a good starting point so people would know what they are.
So is that an agenda suggestion before we move to the idea of making a committee, or where are we going with this?
Well, I can bring something back. You can look at it and you can decide at that point if there needs to be more public input on it. People are always free to comment at meetings about why don't we have this kind of rule? Why don't we prohibit that? Why don't we say, and some of the things like prohibiting drug use. Well, those are already laws that prohibit drug use. And so, but we do have scattered throughout our code things like no glass bottles, no alcohol. And we need to have those all pulled together. They're in different places in the code right now. Pull them all together in one place, make it the resolution of park rules. And that way it'll match the signs that are out there actually right now that don't have the authority behind.
So, can we make that an agenda item, a future agenda item, in place of having a committee, or do you want to have both of those?
No, yeah, I think a committee would be nice. I think the folks want a committee and let's see how it goes. I mean, maybe no one shows up, but they're asking for a committee.
Okay.
And oversight, including the budget, but we voted against that, right?
Right, so far.
So this is a different one.
Okay, so the thing before us right now then is whether or not we want to have a park ordinances, not including the camping ordinance committee, that would include the town attorney pulling together some information on the various park ordinances that are scattered all over the place as a springboard for this. Yes.
May I make a suggestion? So let me pull together a resolution, note where things come from and why, and bring it back to a council meeting. And you can look at it, people can comment on it, and then you can decide if you want to send that draft document to a committee that you make up and have them provide additional input. And then it comes back to the council to determine whether you want to adopt the resolution or not, or amend it, or how you want to do that. Would that be?
That's a good start.
Okay. All right.
All right. So that was the agenda item would be that we would bring back a resolution, and at that point we would decide whether we wanted a committee that would review it. Is that
I think you would have the staff report have the resolution and then the possibility of forming a committee as a second action item.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, so if that sounds about right, let's go ahead and have a raised hands of how many people want that. Everybody? Okay, there you go. All right. So I'm going to.
Could I comment on one of the on Janet's proposal, on council's proposal, on putting together a parks package. This past Friday, we had a PGD contractor go into one of our parks, Doc Edgar Park, and cut a heritage London plane tree with no permits from the town of Fairfax. I had a complaint from Ray Moritz, who said it was one of the healthiest trees in town, and they came in and cut it down, and they didn't advise the town of Fairfax that they were going to come in our park and cut a tree down. I think we've got to get a handle on what's going on here with our parks. I don't think we can allow just people to come in and start cutting trees in our park because, PG&E pays by trees cut. That's how these people make their money. And I mean, I think we've got to deal with that issue.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure if there's an agenda item there yet, but it might be included in the parks. A couple of other things that I propose that we actually probably bring to our retreat is a discussion of a community outreach engagement and education activities for the council and staff. So if I guess we'll go ahead and vote on that if that's okay. I'm not sure if I missed any other suggestions here. Oh, there was one more. It's Frank's. I'm sorry. The charter city is what we're going to talk about next.
Before you go there, okay, the way the retreat works is you come with these suggestions. It would not be a future agenda item for a council meeting. And the retreat is a council meeting, but you come with that. And then we agree that we want that as a goal. So I don't think you vote on that for this
I will
purpose.
withdraw that then. I think the other suggestion we had then was a task force to make this a charter city or a charter town. And my suggestion had been to make that a discussion item at the retreat because it's such a big ticket item that it might be a good idea for the council to decide that that was really a goal they wanted to take on.
I agree with that concept. And I think what would be good if there's time at the retreat, the laws have changed a lot about the authority that charter cities have. In fact, all these new state laws impact charter cities now. So I think to the extent there's time at the retreat, a brief primer on what charter cities difference between a general law city would be helpful.
If I may speak to that, Sausalito has had a staff report. I was just going to get the staff report from Sausalito and bring it to the town council here and have a discussion with us, reading Sausalito staff report on the issue of charter cities. 5 charter cities fought the state down south, and they defeated the arena numbers. They stopped them, and Attorney General Bonta has appealed that to appellate court down there, and so there has been some victories with the charter city over housing issues.
So I think maybe one thing that could happen in advance of us having another item is occasionally somebody finds something they think is of significant interest to the rest of the council, and I think it's acceptable to send it to the town clerk and have them send it. Is that correct or not?
That's fine. It's online. We can find it online.
Yes, or you can direct us to it so people can look for the Sausalito Charter City.
Do you know what month that was they discussed it?
So the process is, it would have to go on the ballot in 2026.
yeah, it is definitely.
Right, but it's more
It's
like
not something that's going to happen overnight.
Oh, no, but
it's
we're just saying, if
definitely
you want the council to find more information in advance of us doing anything else, I think we could go to the Sausalito website and look it up, because I have looked at it a little bit. And it's definitely fascinating, and it might give people information about whether it's something they want to proceed with.
So I suspect that the town clerk can talk to the clerk in Sausalito.
Is it Sausalito? I thought you said San Rafael.
It was Sausalito. San Rafael already is a charter city. Belvedere did put it on the ballot and it failed.
Yeah.
But Sausalito, I think it was about 6 months ago. And I personally think they've dropped it, but I don't know that for a fact. But I think Christine can talk to the clerk in Sausalito and get it and send it to us.
Right. So do we want to vote at this point about whether or not we want this on a regular agenda? We could do that. And, keep on the table the fact that it could probably also come up as a goal in the retreat. So everybody who wants to see it on the agenda now, maybe a show of hands? Oh, okay. Well, then we will have it on a future agenda rather than just leaving it as a potential goal for the retreat.
So you don't want to hear it at the retreat at all?
I'd like to hear it at the retreat, but
I think it's my reason why I voted in favor is because it's too much for the retreat.
Okay.
okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so that one goes on a future agenda.
Could I make just a quick comment in response to council's comments about, someone asked about having to include their name and address when they speak to the council. In the past, for quasi-judicial hearings, we have required the name and address of the person speaking on that rezoning or land use issue. Do we no longer require that during the quasi-judicial hearing?
I think you can clarify. I was under the impression that it is not legal, but maybe it is under certain circumstances to require that. The Brown Act workshops that I've gone to have said no.
No, the Brown Act doesn't permit you to make as a condition of providing a comment on any item, giving your name or address. You can do it anonymously if you want. You don't even have to live here. And as we see on a regular basis.
I'm talking about quasi-judicial hearing on a land use issue.
No, I am unaware that you are able to require a name and address of an individual when they want to give a public comment on any item, including a public hearing on a quasi-judicial matter.
You're saying you can't require it?
I do not believe you can require it. I will look into that for you further, but I do not believe the Brown Act allows you to make as a condition of commenting provision of name and address. I think you can get up and make an anonymous comment.
Right.
At a quasi-judicial hearing?
Even at a quasi-judicial
Really?
hearing.
Right.
And
I
an
believe that
anonymous person can sue us then? Is that how that works?
I'm sorry?
An anonymous person can sue us then? Don't you have, I mean, you have to exercise your administrative remedy.
I understand that, but if you wish to get up and make an anonymous comment, I do not believe we can require as a condition of commenting, somebody provide their name and address. I
Right.
will look into that for you further if you like. I'll
Thank
get
you. That would be
the
good.
Brown
And I
Act
do,
provision, but
yeah.
yes.
I do want to encourage people to look at the current version of the Brown Act. I think the League of California Cities has one, and they continue to update it and change it. It's also really helpful. I want to just make a pitch for the Cal Cities Conference, which the conference is in September. The new mayors and council members meeting is coming up in January. It's really invaluable for learning where things are at now legally in terms of land use, in terms of Brown Act, and many other topics that are of interest. And I believe everyone also has to take a state mandated ethics course, which goes over some of these issues. Thank you. So I think we voted on this. We're not going to do the town manager's report because the town manager was unable to be here due to a medical emergency. So I think at this point we can adjourn the meeting. So thank you very much.